Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you guys are at. This is your host, Paperbox, and I am extremely excited today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, time to raise some volume. Because joining us today is none other than one of the trailblazing force in this music production industry right now as we speak, and also definitely entrepreneurship. He's the co-founder of URM Academy, which I'm going to talk about a little later on. He's also co-founder of Riffard, and also Dumbforge. So, getting ready to get inspired as we dive deep into the world of music production and definitely the entrepreneurship topics that we'll talk about with the one and only Joel Wanasek on a count of three, two, one. Here we go. Joe, welcome and very, very good morning. Thank you for giving this time out for me for this episode.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I don't even know how I'm going to live up to that intro.
Well, so talking about live up to intro, I was just surfing through YouTube and I could see your TED talk for Sonic Scoop, a couple of years back. You know, uh, so I was wondering that whether I would have time to go through the entire 90 minutes of video. But once I turned into it, it definitely changed my perspective towards music production. Just those 90 minutes, it was full of absolutely valuable knowledge. If somebody wants to probably go through that video, but we'll talk about it. How are you doing today, Joe?
I'm good. I just woke up here, so it's a little early. It was my birthday earlier this week, so I did something I don't do very often. I went out drinking with some friends because, I mean, when you work in music production, you don't really have time for normal people things like hanging out with friends. But I drank a little bit too much the other night. So yesterday I was dead. And
Uh,
then of course I came home at 3 in the afternoon and I did yard work for like 6 hours straight. And then I went for a run. And then I
uh,
was like, okay, so I'm feeling better today. I'm a little bit tired.
you're about 80%.
Yeah, but once we get going, we'll be good.
Sure,
So
sure, sure. So just to give a background to all the viewers, who may not have seen Joel or may not have any idea about, what he's up to and what he does. I mean, we have this wonderful place on web that is called URM Academy. That's Unstoppable Recording Machine Academy. That academy is an online school for all the aspiring rock and metal producer. But don't get me wrong, trust me, all the impartment of the knowledge that we have in terms of technicalities of the music fundamentals or recording producing fundamentals, it kind of covers every genre, I believe. So to cut the chase here, I mean, I'm talking about nail the mix as well, where there are world class producers, recorders would come in, and give about 6 to 8 hours of session on how they recorded one of their best chart busters numbers on this planet Earth. So, I mean, congratulations, Joel, and your team for giving us such an amazing experience through the URM Academy. I have a quick question on that, right?
sure.
IL is also one of the co-founder of your academy, right? So, when was the
Yeah, so is
project?
Joey.
Yeah. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So it's Joey Sturgis, right? So yeah. So when was the time that you kind of figured out that, hey, you know what? During that project, I kind of know that they are the ones who will be the right business partner for me.
I mean, there's some history there. I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur and I've had various endeavors with various levels of success and throughout my career. But when I met Joey, and I kind of met Joey by accident, that's actually it's a long story, but there are some good lessons. I don't know if you ever want to deep dive into that, but one thing about Joey that I always liked is he pays on time, meaning that you know
So
he
good.
does what he says he's going to do. And when it comes time to get paid, even if like a project doesn't go well, for example,
Mhm.
he would still take care of it. And, I respect that. It shows a high level of integrity. And Joey and I just were really good friends. We were both self-taught. We were both from the Midwest of the United States. They call it if you're not from the US, it's called flyover country, where the planes fly over and no one
Yeah.
actually lives because it's just cornfields. So Joey and I both kind of taught ourselves how to do audio production. And, I mean, Joey obviously became one of the most successful metal producers in the
Yes.
history of the genre and the
Yes.
entire world.
Yes.
And, just had a 10-year dominance in what he did that, is unmatched by many. But, Joey and I, like the first time we got together, and we were just we just connected on a different level, because it was like the first time I had worked with another producer, and it was the first time that he had worked with another producer. And we both used the same software, and we came to the same conclusions about how we did what we did all on our own.
Uh-huh.
And we were just two like extremely self-driven people. So we kind of became friends, and we started doing work together. Now, many years in the future, we were talking about audio all the time,
Uh-huh.
and he had begun selling products, and he was
Uh-huh.
doing really well with it. And what happened is we were like, well, we should maybe record our conversations, because there's a lot of people that want to, get, his advice, is particularly because he was so famous at the time.
Yep.
I was doing all right, but I hadn't like broken
Mm-hmm.
anything
Mm-hmm.
big, as we would say. So Joey kind of, him and he's like, well, I know this other guy, Al, and he's like, he does a little bit of audio. He's like into this education stuff, and he does a little bit of podcasting. So let's talk to him. So, the three of us kind of sat down, and the difference, I like to say, when it comes to URM, there's a lot of people that could have done or did, sorry, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
could have did what we did, but we were the ones that actually did it. Meaning, out of all the people that I know in this space, we were so far ahead on the entrepreneurial curve. And I don't think until 2020, when everybody was sitting around with nothing to do by force,
Mm-hmm.
that more people, naturally picked it up and kind of got into the space. But like, we were so far ahead of everybody else. And out of all the people that I know, and all the people that Joey knew, we were the only people that wanted to do stuff like sell products and, teach other people how to do it. Because I mean, for me personally, I came up, like I said, I'm self-taught. So it
Mm-hmm.
always pissed me off that I could never get into like a big studio.
Uh-huh.
I could never get an internship. I could never, I'm like, I'm willing to clean the toilet bowl with the toothbrush. I don't care. I will sleep on the floor, move to LA and work for free. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. And, I could just never get in anywhere, because, everybody wrote me off. And so, I started my own studio and worked very, very hard for a very, very long time. So for me, I've always we have a saying here, we have a chip on my shoulder, which kind of basically means like I've got something to prove to the world. So I kind of, it was a real struggle for me. So when we started doing education,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd been doing some online education before in the guitar sector,
Yes.
starting in like 1999. But I had a website called insaneguitar.com, which is now dysfunction. It doesn't exist anymore, but it
Mm-hmm.
was very successful at the time. And I've always loved teaching people. And for me, it was kind of like music has been good to me and my family. I've always wanted to give back and help inspire like the next generation of people, because I know what it's like to sit in your mom's basement with
Uh-huh.
no money in your bank account, and usually negative money,
Yep.
working 16 hours a day with some shit band that's never going to go anywhere. And just, knowing that this is what you want to do all day. This is what you
Mm.
care about. And everybody else looks at you like you're crazy. So, when I met Joey and Al, they were kind of cut from the same mental cloth. And like,
Yeah.
as Al put it, it's nice to work with people that actually do what they're going to say, do what they say they're going to do.
Wow. Yes. Definitely.
I mean,
Definitely.
here's kind of a funny story about that. And
Uh-huh.
real quick is that, when Joey started making
Mm-hmm.
products, and you got to understand how famous Joey was at the
Yes.
time. I mean, it was just like he could tweet something on the internet, and the internet would shut down that's all everybody would be talking about in the whole space.
Exactly.
Joey started selling like a bass drop sample or some
Mm-hmm.
drum sample he made, and like he did very well with it.
Yep.
And he called me and like 20 other producers, and I was the least famous out of the group. And he's like, hey, let's make a product together. And they're all like, okay. Well, I was the only one
Uh-huh.
that turned something in.
Okay.
So he's like, I need this. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And in 3 days, I turned it around and it was in his inbox,
Uh-huh.
and we put it out. And then I did it again and again and again. So that's why I'm in the position where I am, because I was a guy that actually did it while everybody else was like, yeah, man, that'll be cool. I'll get around to it.
Maybe it is also the fact that Joey kind of understood that you probably are a low maintenance but high output guy. Whereas the other folks would be more like, as you mentioned, right, high maintenance and very low output, and they'll just do brainstorming and stuff like that, and they never even kind of execute what is being expected, right? So
Here's something
Mhm.
that I don't want to, sorry to cut you off, but this is important with a team dynamic, because you asked.
Mhm.
I think it's really important when you're picking business partners to find people that complement you, because it's like a marriage. Your roles will grow, but you want to find people that complement your weaknesses and that your strengths, like you do this.
Yeah.
And that's something that we have. Like, I'm not a very good analytical, organized, hyper planner person. That's not how my brain works. But I will out execute almost anybody on the planet. I will work until, I am dead and I can barely move if that's what it takes to get something done in the last minute. Then I have Joey, who's like a human computer, and he's like one of the best tacticians and
Absolutely.
strategists I've ever met.
Hmm.
And then you have Ale, and Ale is one of the best visionaries, and he's very good at like daily operational, like he's good at putting tasks in a thing and making sure a team completes something on time. Where it's like, I'm really good at, hey, I need you to go sell something, or I need you to get on the phone with this person and go, I need you to get on the plane and go fly and convince this person to work with us.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm good at. So you got to find people that put
In
it together. So
yeah,
anyway, sorry.
yeah,
Go
no,
on.
no, it's all right. In fact, that was one of my questions, that how have you picked yourself, and how have you picked your members, to kind of come up with a very successful venture as URM Academy. Kind of that kind of answers the questions, a question. And I think what I also wanted to know is, when you met Ale and Joey, right? What are the things that you got inspired that, oh, you know what, this is something that I suck at, not about the analytical facts, or running day-to-day operation, but in terms of the music production, what kind of inspired you? Okay, Joey has got this, and Gail is better at this. Wish I could learn something from them.
Wait, in terms of like actual production, I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
sure I followed the
yeah, yeah.
question.
From actual production.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, one thing, Joey is really, really gifted as a producer.
Hmm.
Music is kind of weird. Everybody comes into the music industry with like an idea of what they think they're gonna do. Like, I'm gonna be a mixer, I'm gonna be a producer, and you always usually end up somewhere else because
Yep.
I don't decide what gigs I get hired for. The market decides.
True.
I can't control who's gonna hire me. And I find, as I've been doing this professionally for over 20 years. I find that um over those years, what I've done, I started off recording and doing everything myself, and then I've eventually, I'm just a mixer now for like the last 6 years, and
Hmm.
it kind of just naturally happened. It's not like I wanted to be a mixer.
Hmm.
It's not like I set out at day one like I'm gonna be this mixer and work on all these cool bands. No, not at all. It wasn't even in my mind. I'm like, I'm gonna be a producer. I want to write songs. So Joey is a great writer. And there was a point where he was and producer, and there was a point where he was so busy. He's like, I need to outsource mixing. And,
Hmm.
I know you're pretty good at it. So do you want to do it for me? And we'll kind of do it as a team. Like, you can do the work, and then I'll kind of come in and then put the final touches on it, make some tweaks. And, he'll be like the executive producer versus
Uh-huh.
like the producer. So, I'm doing 90% of the knob turning, but he's in there like, hey, I don't like the snare drum, make it sound better, or do this or that. So we started doing a lot of work together. AL comes from Audio Hammer, and
Hmm.
Audio Hammer, those guys, I mean, are very gifted down there. Jason and Mark at the time, Mark Lewis and Jason Sukoff. And one thing I think I learned from AL, so I learned a lot about like producing from Joey in terms of like building sounds and
Hmm.
like, you know, making things sound like Transformer movies.
Uh-huh.
And in terms of like what I learned from AL is a lot of really cool engineering things that I wouldn't have thought about, because I grew him up in my own basement. So
Uh-huh.
I didn't really have a big drum room to record in, or like
Correct.
a bunch of amp, because if I wanted an amp, I had to go buy it, and it might have taken me 4 months of working my ass off eating ramen soup and sleeping on the floor, you know what I mean, to be able to go
Exactly.
afford like my first tube amp. So music gear is super, super expensive. And unless you're an in-demand pro, you probably can't afford most of the tools that are necessary. And I've kind of had to earn everything in my life. It's not like, it's not like I got to inherit some money or anything like that. Like I've clawed my way up from the basement. So everything that I own is mine.
So, so,
But
so, Joel, talking about the basement, sorry to cut you off there.
yeah,
Talking
yeah.
about the basement. So, what initially kind of sparked your passion for the audio production?
Well, I've been into music since I want to say the age 8 or 9. Now it runs in my family. Like my grandpa, he was a multi instrumentalist while he was alive. He played like 13 different instruments. Now, I mean, he wasn't like world class at any of them,
Right.
but he was like a band director at school, and he played in a band, in like a polka band until he was,
Uh,
until he passed away. So like literally the week before he couldn't move anymore. So my grandmother was a music teacher. My dad, it kind of skipped a generation. My dad, he played a little bit of saxophone, but I think he picked the wrong instrument and hated his teacher and had a bad experience with it. So he kind of hated music and it wasn't for him. Me, I started with the violin in 5th grade and I walked in, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to do this. But it wasn't until I found guitar. Um, I don't know. I'm not really a spiritual person, but I
Mhm.
will tell you there are days in my life where I really wonder. But this is one of those days where, like, I remember going over to my friend's house. He's like, "Dude, I got a guitar," and I just kind of got into heavy metal at the time. I was like maybe 11 or 12 years old, and we went over and he taught me how to play like "Come as You Are" by Nirvana and
Yeah.
"Walk" by Pantera on his guitar. And I thought it was the baddest ass thing in the entire world. Like I grabbed that thing and it was like the sky opened up and shot me with a bolt of lightning. I put that thing in my hand and I'm like, I know this. There's something about this. I've never felt a wave of excitement like this in my entire life. This is going to be a big part of my life. I just knew it. I can't explain it. Again, this is one of those like spiritual moments where my logical brain and then, my intuitive brain, they just like don't, I can't reconcile how that happens, but sometimes you just know. And man, I just sat down and like, so I begged my parents for a guitar. I
Yep.
got in guitar. I played a little bit, but I didn't have lessons. And then the real moment came about 2 years later. I was sitting at the lunch table
Mhm.
with the same friend who got me into guitar. And he was like, I want you. And I wasn't really, I was still playing violin in an orchestra and stuff at the time, but he was like,
Mhm.
you got to listen to this guy play guitar. I'm like, yeah, whatever, I didn't really care at the time. And he put on the Randy Rhoads tribute album with Ozzy Osbourne. And man, he put on Mr. Crowley.
Yep.
And my jaw just hit the freaking floor. I mean, I was like, I didn't know somebody could pull those types of sounds out of guitar. I went home and I bought that tab book and I
Okay.
played guitar for like 4 hours that day. And I immediately signed up for lessons and I walked in and I'm like, I want to be this guy.
Wow.
How do you like it? Again, it just hit me with a jolt of lightning where it just sparked this passion. I'm like, so at that point in my life, I'm like, I want to become a guitar virtuoso. So I started practicing like 6 hours a day
Mhm.
all the way, till I was probably like 24, 25 years old. I mean, I was like 16 or 15 or 16 at the time that this had happened, but it was like I immediately went out and bought every Satriani record and every tab book for every Steve Vai record, every Ingve record, every
Mhm.
like, anyone who could, every Shrapnel records, every tab. And I just sat there and I just practiced guitar. And, um, it wasn't until I was maybe, I want to say, a senior in high school
Okay.
that I walked into the studio and I never even knew what a recording studio was.
Yep.
But my friends come in, he's like, yeah, dude, we just recorded our band. And we're like,
That was so
we have
cool.
a band too.
Okay.
This is sick. Like, we want to go record. So we booked studio time and we went and recorded these songs.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, our first recording was a disaster, but like I walked in there and I'm like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, I want one of those. How much thing? She had this like Mackie DAP. He's like, oh yeah, it was like 10 grand. I'm like, $10,000. That would take me like 2 years of begging groceries to get. And I'm like, damn, that sucks. But then, like a year or two later, they came out with the M Audio Delta 1010
Uh-huh.
and Cool Edit Pro, which before became Adobe Audition.
Yep.
And then, I saved my whole high school to buy like a 4-track mini disc recorder that would break after a minute and 32 seconds of recording. And you have to like repunch in the band and you know what I mean? And so at the time I was playing in like an instrumental shred band and but I bought that Delta 1010
Uh-huh.
and then God, this is the most long-winded story. Sorry. um
It's all right.
you got me going
Yeah.
down memory lane.
Yeah. You're talking about, starting off Adobe Audition.
Yeah, so I bought that Delta 1010
Yeah.
and I started like a thrash metal band in like 2000 and 2000. Like what a stupid thing to do. I mean, I should have been playing new metal, but whatever. We were like in the late 80s. We just
Yeah.
wanted to be like Metallica
Yeah.
with harmonized guitars or
Yep.
whatever. So man, I got that we got signed
Uh-huh.
and then we got studio time, but then like the record label collapsed and we got dropped. And then I'm like, well, I want to put out a record. I'm just going to learn how to do this. So there was a time we had like won a talent show in this was like a year before my
Mhm.
old band. We won the talent show and we got to walk into the studio
Okay.
and it was a much like more established guy who would work with some serious bands. And like I walked in there and I'm just like, I don't know. Again, it was one of those lightning moments where something was like, I want to do this.
Yep.
So I was kind of into production a little bit, but it wasn't until I walked into the second studio in my life that I'm like, I don't know what it is. I was so drawn to it. And
Uh-huh.
this is also when I had discovered like Andy Sneap and like I remember listening to like Testament records and stuff like that. And I was just like, dude, this sounds so sick.
Yep.
all these, like I got into Sonics and then
Yep.
like I walked into the studio. And again, it was one of those moments. I had no idea that I was going to be doing this for a living, but I knew right there, I could feel that something about the studio was just like a calling. And, so I bought a Delta 1010. And when my band got dropped like a year later, I
Uh-huh.
just made my own damn record. And we were playing shows. I showed it to some other bands and they were like, dude, this is sick. Cause I was like the only guy back then that had a kick drum sample locally. And they were like, dude, that kick hits. So I started getting all this work. And I had a job after I finished college for a while.
Uh-huh.
And dude, like I all I did in my job was sit there for like 7.5 hours and read Gear Sluts and Pro Sound Web and study production,
Wow.
and then come home and then, like save up all of my money for like 6 months and buy
Uh-huh.
a microphone. And then, like that's all I did for like 2.5 years. And then I slowly started gaining production clients. And at some point I was like, fuck this, man. I don't know if I can swear. Sorry. F this. I don't want a job anymore. I hate working for other people. I just want to play in my stupid band and record bands. And I just, moved back into my mom's basement and like stopped, just basically decided to become a loser by American standards and just
Uh-huh.
went for it. And it was tough. I mean, it took me like 3 years, but slowly but surely,
Yep.
I started focusing on producing as a career, meaning I quit playing around in bands when I was about 27 years old because we had toured like some arena dates with Buck Cherry and Papa Roach. My
Yep.
band finally made it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
man, my wife was like, "You just played for 10,000 people last night and you got paid $250."
That's
I'm like,
the
"Yeah, but we're the shitty opening band. Like those guys cleared 100 grand in merch."
yeah.
They're like, "Yeah, but you're famous and you're not." I'm like, "Yeah, but like, look what we could," So anyway, she was like,
Was that kind of
"Why
an
don't
eye
you focus?"
opener moment for you?
No, I didn't care. I didn't care about money until I had kids
Uh-huh.
because, once you have children, then it's like, it's a massive reality check, and
Yeah.
people that don't have it don't understand. So, I started focusing on producing. I'm like, all right, I want to actually be a producer, which is weird. That's a little bit late to the game, but it worked out. I mean, I'd already had clients and I'd been doing it for like 5 or 6 years. But that's when it was like really within a year, it took off and I was started making some serious money. And then it was like, I remember sitting there, I was still kind of in my mom's basement. And I remember going to like a Christmas party. My cousin comes up to me and she condescendingly says like, "Oh, are you still screwing around with bands in your mom's basement?" I'm thinking to myself, like, you've had the same corporate job for years and I make like twice as much money as you do. And yes, I'm recording shitty bands in my mom's basement, but that's not what came out of my mouth. Like I was so pissed off, just like
Uh-huh.
the because my mom would be like, "When are you going to get a real job?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
That's the
she didn't,
expectation from parents, right? To get a job.
yeah, I mean, she meant well, but she just didn't understand. And I guess from the outside it looks bad. It's like, why is my loser kid doesn't have a job with benefits? Why did he move back into my house? Like, get out, go, go
Yeah.
grow up. And I'm just sitting there in the basement all day, playing around on the computer. And again, it worked out, and eventually I got out of there and stuff like that. But it just,
Yep.
it was a tough transition.
Yeah.
It was a hard period of my life.
So talking about transition, Joel, right? Starting from the basement, getting into the band, and finally realizing your call is about, producing, mixing stuff, right? And then to this URM Academy, right? And it has
Yes.
certainly played an immense role in kind of highlighting what you guys are capable of as a unit, right? So when we talk about, URM as an academy, I mean, do you have any kind of inspiring story of somebody who enrolled into, some of these courses and have made significant growth in their career?
Tons of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, tons of them. I mean, there's so many students that we have had, that have gone on to work with like major producers. Yeah, I mean, all the time, because now we've been around for a while. So, anybody in metal usually is like, "Hey, I need a really good editor or a really good intern, or I need a really good engineer." They always call and they're like, "Hey, go find me somebody." you know, Now it took a while to get there, but there's been many, many people that have come from our group of people, like our student base, that have gone on to do just amazing things. And it's really inspiring, because like we'll do in-person summits, and we haven't done one since COVID
Hmm.
because and the world is a mess right now. We have wars and economic depression and just all
Yeah.
this crazy stuff is going on in the world, and it makes it hard to get people to fly in. And it's very expensive as a company to do something. Like we
Yeah.
don't make money on that. We
Yeah.
do it because it's badass and it's very rewarding for us personally. So from a business point of view, it's a big waste of time. But from our point of view, personally, it's like when you see somebody come out to something like that
Uh-huh.
first year, and like, they're out just like, they're young, they're bright-eyed, and they don't know what to do. And then like you sit down, you give them the coaching, and they go through and you tell them, and you work hard with them. And then like you see them 4 years later at like a meetup or something, and like they're like, man, I'm working for this producer and I just got this on the charts and this and that. And you're like, you just want to give them a big hug, man. You're just like, high five, I'm so proud of you. And it's so, for me, it's really incredible to be able to like reach out and spread the passion and love I have for music production with other people and just share it, because it's like, my problem is I don't live in LA. I can't go to the bar on the weekend
Mm-hmm.
and sit down and just talk to a bunch of random people about music. I don't watch sports. I don't do anything else other than mix, and think about mixing. I mean, I like to cook, but
Uh-huh.
and I have kids, but you know what I mean? Like I go to like the soccer game with the parents, and they're like, they want to like talk about normal people stuff, and I don't know how to.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, did you see the game? Like, I'm like, no. They're like, you don't watch it. What's wrong with you? I'm like, I own like 3 businesses, dude. Like, all I do is work. And they're like, well, that sucks. I'm like, no, it's actually fucking awesome. Like, I love it. Nothing sucks about what I do. I love it. I wouldn't
Exactly.
be doing it if it.
There
So yeah,
are, it's lucky to be, following what you like from the heart, right? And able to make, good money out of it is definitely a significant achievement, in
it's
it.
hard to do,
It
man.
is, it
I mean,
is.
the thing is, people only look, and this is like big bands or people like who are successful entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
right? People only look at the success as if it materialized out of thin air,
Yeah,
you
like
know?
overnight.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm over here like, look, when I was in my 20s and
Mm-hmm.
you guys were like, hey, I'm down at Panama City Beach on spring break. We met these girls, we're partying. You should come down here. I'm like, bro, it's 3 in the morning and I've been glued to my computer since 8 a.m. and I've only sat up to use the bathroom once. Like, that's how busy I am right now. And they're like, oh man, all you do is work, blah, 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 blah. People don't realize I've worked for 15 years straight with like
Yeah.
almost no. I mean, I went to Russia a couple times because my wife's from there for vacation, but like, dude, I mean, I have worked enough to retire, and I'm 42 years old now. I have worked more than any person who is like 65 years old, unless they're an entrepreneur, because I'm telling you, weekends, I am always working. When I'm not working, I'm thinking about working. I think I have a mental issue, health issue with it, where like I'm obsessed with work. And I mean, dude, I got 3 kids. It's like you have to if
Yep.
you want to feed 3 kids. It's brutal. So
So,
it's tough.
on the same question, right? As someone who is, you always are conscious about the quality of work that you do, not just the volume of work, right? It's also the
Yes.
quality. But being also a father, I think you've got 3 kids.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah. So, what kind of sacrifices that you have to make on a daily basis, right? Still now, because you are workaholic, right? And how do you able to balance your time with your production, your family, and definitely your wife, and also churning out hundreds of mixes and thousands of lessons and so much thing to do.
That's an amazing question. And it's unfortunately going to be a long answer. But imagine that. I talk too much. But like
No, can I
basically,
say something? Can I say something?
yeah,
If your wife watches it, she'll be more attentive to what you're gonna say on
she
this one.
definitely will not.
All right.
In theory,
Right.
that makes sense, but my wife is Russian. they have a
Ah,
they have a different cultural way of looking at work than we do in the West. And it's always a struggle. So, I mean, the short answer is you do the best that you can. It's really hard. I will say this, for as much as I work,
mhm.
and I say that I work, I do prioritize my family. And when I'm at home, I do my best to like turn off my phone and be with them. And, it's everything I do is for my kids. All the money I make, they get it. I don't own anything. I have a nice studio, right? I have like an SSL and some cool stuff like that. But, I drive a shitty car, like I don't live fancy at all. I don't care, so
Uh,
your kids get everything. It's like you rather put them in some clubs or like put them in math tutoring than, go out and like buy something nice for yourself. So man, like, I mean, that's what being a good parent is. So you have to prioritize your family and your kids, which is tough because in this business, it's like you can get a call on a Thursday at 7 p.m. and it's like, look, I need you to mix 6 songs by Saturday morning. And it's like a major producer. What are you going to say? No. And you need to call your wife and be like, I'm not going to see you for the next 2 days, and then you'll get that done. But then you still have 8 other things that are now backlogged to do. So the answer is you have to physically schedule time, and there's like a certain time I come home every day. I do that stuff. And then if I got to go back and I got to grind it out till 2 a.m. and then wait, it's hard. So optimally, what's the most important? There's a couple of factors to be able to do this. First off is you need to maintain your health. I mean, a lot of people don't like to do this. I think, diet is the most important thing. And I know everybody's got their opinion on what diet and like what you should eat or what's good or what's not good, or, I don't believe in any of that shit. My opinion is that I think you should eat a little bit of everything. It's like people that are like vegetarians, like all my friends that are vegans and vegetarians, they're all like super overweight. They all look like shit. Their skin, they all are prematurely aged. And I'm like, dude, put your finger in your eye. What's that? That's for ripping flesh, like, you can't tell me humans aren't evolved to eat meat. So I believe in eating a wide variety of food. And the reason is that, my wife is like super into this nutritional science and health. And she reads all these research papers and stuff. So nerdy. So we're always talking about this and thinking about this. And like certain vitamins and minerals, when you eat them, they conflict with each other, yet some are synergistic. It's like vitamin D and vitamin A, I believe, absorb together. If you're going to calcium. So if you're going to drink, like, let's just say a cup of almond milk, make sure you get some sun, you know what I mean, while you're doing it, because it helps the absorption. Whereas certain things, they don't work together if you eat certain foods. So I try to just eat a very, very wide spectrum of foods, a lot of different colors, a lot of different types of protein. I try to eat organic as much as possible because we've just poisoned the US food supply and everything is fertilizers and chemicals. I try to sleep 8 hours, no matter what, even when I have to grind it, and try to prioritize that. And when I can, I try to exercise and just even like, if you can't, like if you're printing stems, right, for an artist, I can sit here and just hoist myself up in the chair.
Triceps.
Yeah, and just hold myself in a static position because it's a high intensity workout. If you can do that for 2 minutes while you're doing that, it's like you can get a full core workout while you're sitting there. So that is what I'm talking about, is like, so health number 1, and 2 is optimization of time. A lot of people waste their time. And I mean, they're so wasteful. I'll give you an example. I don't have much time to learn new things because I'm too busy doing things, but I go shopping a lot because I have kids, and I'm not the kind of business owner who likes to outsource his life. Like, I don't believe in that. Like, I clean my house. If a pipe breaks, like I like to get my hands dirty. I do my own landscaping, one, because I'm a cheap business owner, but 2, because I believe in manual labor. And I think, it's how you stay in shape. So I have a lot of time to go to grocery stores and chase around. My wife doesn't like to do that stuff. And while I'm there, I'm like, boy, that's a lot of downtime. Now, everybody else is just slowly lollygagging around the store, at least where I live. No one's in a hurry. I'm like walking at twice the speed of normal people. So I'm exercising while I'm doing it. I'm like power walking. Yeah. I look like a psychopath when I'm in the store. Like, I'm literally dodging people with carts. It sounds ridiculous, but it's accurate. And in the meantime, I've got my headphones on and I'm like listening to a podcast at 2x speed, or I'm listening to somebody mix or talk about mixing at like 2 to 1.5 to 2x speed. So I'm studying and I'm learning. In the car, I'm either doing deals and making phone calls, or like, if I go for a run, I'm sitting there listening to a podcast, so I'm like, I take every minute of my time and I optimize it to do something so I can have more time to like unplug and, like, for example, be with my kids. So it's like, if I got 2 hours to be with my kids, I want to focus on that for 2 hours. And then it's like, I got the rest of my time. It's like, so instead of sitting in my bed and watching Netflix, like everybody else is doing, because they're tired, my ass is sitting there and I'm like watching somebody else mix, taking notes. I'm like, all right, so I know I got to come up against this person in 3 weeks in a mix off. Here's where they're strong. Here's where they're weak. Here's how I'm going to whoop their ass.
Wow.
Like, so you got to optimize.
So there is method to the madness, huh?
Absolutely. So health first, hyper optimization of your time and processes. I think on the optimization level, some of that is outsourcing. Like, for example, younger, more inexperienced producers are really foolish with this because they view everything as like a zero-sum game. Like, if I lose this project, I don't gain anything if it goes to anybody else. And I think that's a stupid way to look at it. And I understand, because I used to look at it like that. When you get to the big leagues, you get shuffled around like I'm trying to think of an analogy that's appropriate to say. You get passed around like drugs at a like a high school party. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Like
got it.
you'll work with a band, and then they'll work on the next person, then they'll go to the next person. That's totally normal because everybody's like, let's try this mixer, let's try this mixer, let's work a song with this one, this one, this one. You know, so when you're by yourself and doing everything, if you lose a mix, it's like devastating.
Yep.
You don't understand that if you were to outsource,
Hmm.
you would make way more money, and you might take a short-term hit. And so in the big leagues, you understand this. You don't care. You're like, well, I might not be the right person to mix this, even though I'm making money from mixing. Let's send it to this person over here, and then that person will send me some work. And it's like we pass stuff around. So I work with
Mm.
different producers. I'll give an example. I have a bunch of producers that I work for and I mix for. They're all good mixers. Some of
Right.
them great mixers, but they know I'm better at it than they am. And they're better at writing songs than I am. And they're like, look, if I mix, meaning I take the work from them,
Yep. Yep.
they make more money because they can sit down and get their production fee and just write, 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 write. And they're not wasting days trying to mix, knowing that they're only thing they're ever going to be able to turn in is an A minus because they don't
Correct.
have time to become a great mixer because they're a much better writer. So
Correct.
why not sit there and just focus on writing, pass it off to somebody who's better at it, and just let me sit there and scream and swear about the sonics and spend hours trying to get the snare drum right, and then send it back to you, and you can just listen and be like, yes, no, tweak this, do this, and then back to writing. And so they make way more money being able to just produce tracks, and then they pay me to outsource some of it. So it's the same thing. It's like I have an assistant, Joe, who I've worked with for 10 years, and Joe is just phenomenal at what he does. Joe preps all this stuff. And so when I get the mix, he's already done a bunch of work on it. He sat there and tweaked out all the guitar tones. He's much better at guitar tones than I am. I can mix them all day, but he'll sit down and reamp them and dial them in and do things like that. And he specializes in it. So it's like I'd rather pay Joe part of the till and have
Yep.
him do his thing because it makes me better. It
Yep.
makes him better. And we work as a team and we go back and forth. We go to an external mastering engineer. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He sits down, I work with him. We nerd out. He tells me, hey, you're getting better, you're getting worse, or you should do this, or we help each other improve. So we approach things as a team of a production team. And what happens is that when you've got a good producer, a good mixer, a good mastering engineer, a good assistant, a good editor, whatever, on the team, the results you're going to put out are going to beat the crap 99 out of 100 times of somebody who's just sitting there all by themselves doing everything, because you can be really good at a lot of things, but you can only be like one of the best at like one thing if you really apply yourself.
So how
you know,
do we get rid of that ego, right? Because that's one of the factor where the person is just want to do it by himself or herself, right? And there's some little bit of ego as well. And don't you think so? Maybe in your initial days, you also had the same thinking. You know what?
absolutely.
I'll do A to Z.
That was me for like 10 years. And I look back at how foolish I was,
Yep.
but you got to stop looking at it as a zero sum game.
Yeah.
It's like economics, assuming that you gain something and you lose something, right? It's like the art of negotiation. If like you
Mhm.
and I come in and you're like, I get everything, you get nothing. How do you think that negotiation is going to go? You're just going to be like,
Yep.
see ya.
Yep.
If I come in and I'm like, hey, I know this and this and this are important to you, and this and this and this are important to me. There's some details in the middle, but let's start there. We agree? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing. You can have all of A or all of B, but you can't have all of A and B at the same time. So it's better to come in a little bit towards the center. So it's like if you're really good at writing and getting hired to do writing, you might as well hire somebody like me to mix it.
Yep.
Or if you're really good at mixing, you better find some producers who are decent at it, or you know what I mean? Or if you're like really good at top lining, like why are you
Mhm.
sitting there writing tracks and beats and stuff all day? Just sit down and work with some producers and come in and just write hooks with people.
Yeah.
Only focus on that. If you're really good at programming stuff, just write tracks. Like you go to LA, you see all these people, they're track writers, top liners, and they just specialize in this one little niche thing. And they're always busy because that's all they think about all the time. So when you're sitting there by yourself, it's like go make friends with 6 other producers and
Yep.
find out who's good at what, have some honest assessments and discussions,
Yep.
and pass some stuff around like, hey, let me mix this for you because you're hung up on this, you're stuck, you feel like you can't get it to where you need it. Let me do it for you. And I'll tell you what, here, I need some help on this, so I'll pay you to edit this. Or find ways to exchange services so people don't feel threatened, and then just start naturally working together as a team. I mean, you got to look for those opportunities.
Yeah, I think this also comes with a little bit of experience, and definitely networking is one of the key factor how you can achieve this, right? thanks to internet that we can connect with so many people worldwide, like we just did right on this podcast. Through internet we met. And but talking about your students or people who are aspiring music producer, how much do you think networking is is one of the factor to for them to excel? Because without it,
I have a
yeah.
good answer for this.
Yes, go ahead.
I was at a marketing conference,
Okay.
and it's a long story, but I met this Frenchman
Hmm.
named John Guillaume,
Okay.
and he's a very, very, very close friend of mine. And when I met this guy, I don't know how we ended up. Like I kept running into this guy over and over and over. There's like 6,000 people, and then somehow we ended up at somebody's Airbnb, and he just walks in at like midnight. We were just chatting till like 7 in the morning. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you
Yeah.
just meet with people and you just become friends and you connect. And in the middle of that conversation, at like 4:30 in the morning, he was like, here's what my dad told me on my deathbed. And I'm like, and this guy owns a company that's worth like $80 million or something like this, So my buddy, he's very, very successful
Yep.
entrepreneur in like the financial trading space. So, so I'm like listening, and he was like, my dad tells me on his deathbed, he's like, these are the four pillars. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you listen to this. And he grabbed me and he looked me in the eye. He's like, you listen to this and you take this to heart. This is important. I'm like, okay. Okay. I know this man needs business. I have a lot of respect. So, and he's like, the knowledge, experience, network, wealth. I'm like, okay. He's like, knowledge. You start off your career learning every possible thing you can. It's a pillar of success.
Mm.
Next is experience. You got to go out and do it and become a master of that while
Mm.
you're always working on improving your knowledge and experience. But then comes networking. You
Mm.
cannot build wealth without those three things. You cannot become very successful. You can't do it. You need to go out and network. It is the third pillar of this. Now, and then once you have all of those ducks in that order in a row, okay, so this tells you how much I value networking. Then you will build the life that you want for you and your family. So, that's something I take very personally when he said that. I mean, this was like an hour discussion we had about it. I'm trying
Wow.
to keep it short for the podcast, but like,
Yeah.
this is stuff I sit down and teach like my 7-year-old kid. I'm like, what are the four pillars? What do they mean? Why are they important? Like, they could recite them like that because so networking is the third pillar. And it is a very, very sacred thing. And it is a critical thing for anybody's success. But you cannot network unless you have value to give somebody. And that value becomes one from becoming an expert in something, meaning you need to have knowledge. And two, you need to have experience. And I know that sounds boring and so basic. But if you really unpack that, and like everybody, oh, I know what that means. But do you really? You have to
Hmm.
really dive into that on a philosophical level. When you have the knowledge and the experience, you can then offer something to somebody where they would want to work with you on something. And then, as your network grows, you will achieve more and more things and you'll get more and more opportunities. And, then you will achieve the life that you want. So networking is one of the most important things, but we need to not put the horse before the cart. In order to network properly, you have to have the first two pillars in the row. You have to have the knowledge and you have to have the experience to be able to network effectively. And then, because you have to have something to offer. It's like if I walk up to Elon Musk, I have nothing I can offer Elon Musk other than better mixes. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Like,
I
so why would he waste his time? But
Yeah.
I can offer somebody who's a producer, I can be like, hey, let me master your mixes, or let me mix your stuff, or let me come on my podcast, or come do a nail the mix. There's a lot of things we could collaborate on.
Yeah. While you were explaining that, I was just thinking, these four words with their initials, it's more like a KNEW in no particular order. Like I wish I knew, KNEW, isn't it right?
Yes,
Knowledge,
correct.
network, experience, and wealth, right?
Oh, I never thought about it like that, but that's really clever.
Good one.
New.
Yeah, I wish
Who
I
would have
knew.
known?
Who would have known, right? Correct.
Who would have known that? I wish I knew that we knew.
Exactly, exactly. So on the same topic, as network is one of the most important factor for somebody to grow in their career. Have you ever felt that musicians are more emotional? They are more emotional and they get carried away as well at times. And some of these teachings, some of these knowledge, which is absolutely valuable, they kind of ignore that and just go by their emotion, driven by emotion. What do you think about
Um, I don't know if I agree. I
that? Okay.
think in terms of psychometric profiling, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
If we take a Myers-Briggs test, they'll break us down into 16 different
Uh-huh.
types of personality archetypes. I heard from a couple of really smart entrepreneurs once. We break it down into 4 things, and that pretty much covers. I mean, of course, there's some outliers, but that covers the 4 major archetypes of people that you're going to meet in business. And what they do is it breaks it down by emotion. Okay, so he calls it gemstones. You can call it whatever you want. Different entrepreneurs have different code words and have
Mm-hmm.
rebranded this. But the basic thing is you have action people, that people that are motivated by success, winning, being the best. Like, you know, in this person's thing, he calls it like a ruby. Like that is,
Okay.
I'm like that. I'm wired like that. Like I like to go out and win and conquer, a conqueror, you know. Then you have the social people, right? They're motivated by fun. Those people are like, you know, they got the 6 colors in their hair. They're like, I got 6 new tattoos and piercings. We're at the party. They're super loud. They live for the validation of other people. They like to have fun. You know, they're people. They're just out there. Then you have the third one. And the
Right.
third one is like the analytical type out there. They're like, well,
Yep.
I was thinking, and we need to put this into a process because you can't just come in here. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
very,
The
they're just
slicing,
super
dicing. Yep. Yep.
right. And then the fourth one
Yep.
is you have like the really emotional, like community driven, like I want to go
Uh,
save the world and hug the tree and I want to be part of something. And like, so these types of personalities are not, like the action type and like the we'll call it like the softer type. So if we give them colors, like the ruby, the action, and the color, the other one would be like we'll call them like, I don't know. We'll call them like, oh shit, I forgot. But so those two are opposites because like I'm a pretty intense, passionate person. So when I meet
mm-hmm.
something like that who's really laid back and kind of soft, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, this person is fucking weak. I will destroy, and they're like, whoa, psycho, calm down, man. Just relax. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have the analytical people that are like, you're out of control. You're not focused. You're not organized. And then you have the party people, so you can see how the analytical and the fun people, they're like, and then you have the soft people and like the really like alpha type people, and they headbutt. And it's like, but it's interesting how those things. So my point is I've seen all personality types, and I understand where you mean a lot of musicians are emotional. They're definitely a lot of right-brained people and a lot of people that are kind of like on the soft, creative, artsy side. There's also, especially in heavy music, a ton of like really technical, analytical, dry people
Yep.
that are just like super nerdy. I mean, again, you'll go on Reddit and they'll be like, I don't like the snare on this mix, blah, blah, blah. And the construction of the riff. And I'm just like, shut up and show us something you've fucking done. You know what I mean? So there's so many of those people in music too. And so the point is society is equally spread.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I feel like some professions tend to lend themselves towards other people. I mean, I can think of just as many people in every type of personality
Uh-huh.
in music. The problem with musicians is that we all have this, how do you put it? Like, we didn't choose music for the money. We chose
Mm.
music because music chose
Chose
us.
us.
Yeah, it's a calling, man. Like I said,
Calling.
you're like 13 sitting at your buddy's and he hands you the guitar and it's like electric. It hits you in the soul. And you're like, I have to do this. This is like, you get excited like a kid in a candy store. Like it resonates with your inner being and just like shocks you. Like I walked into a studio and I'm like, this, it's like
Yeah.
electricity. So it's not like I chose music. Music was like everything I've ever tried to do. And I've done a lot of things. I ran a health supplement company for 2 years. And I mean, we smashed it. We did really, really, really well, but it was also crazy. And I probably lost 10 years of my life to stress but like I've done a lot of other things in my life outside of music that most people don't know about. But
Okay.
no matter what I do, it's like the world just directs me back to music. So it's like every time I try so hard to like do something else, like some catastrophe will happen or something will just push me back into music. So I'm just like, I just have to accept my path. This is the world has decided this is what I do. This is what I do.
I've heard the story about the CBD company that you were invested in, and you kind of lost about $100,000 in a couple of days' time, and your business partner,
Oh yeah. I
almost lost
disclosed it
about.
publicly. Yeah, that business is insane, man, because you hire affiliates to
Mm,
do marketing for you. And
mm,
because it's like they're like the Michael Jordan of or LeBron James of running ads. The
mm-hmm.
problem is you can't control what you get. So if you get a dishonest person, you hire a network and you have a really strong contract. But then, one of those affiliates might have a couple of sub affiliates that they hire out that go out and like they run some stuff. And the problem is some of those people will run you dirty stuff. So all of a sudden now it's like, I had a guy run me a bunch of fake credit card traffic, and I
Mm,
literally lost like $100,000 in 2 days. And like, I'm sitting there. I mean, that business made money, so like that's probably sounds like insane to some people, but that we pulled out of that with like $2,000 in the checking account and then like shaking from stress because it's like I lost my ability to process payments. I literally had like $100,000 in bills due on an Amex in 30 days. Like everything exploded. And, stuff like that would happen all the time. It's like the bank just told, all of a sudden your chargeback ratio goes up by 1%
Yep.
because some affiliate sent you some garbage traffic. And while you're trying to fight that, the damage has already been done and it was done like a month ago. And dude, you're sitting there and you're like, the bank just held $60,000 in deposit. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent this month.
Exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
so it was like an emotional roller coaster. I feel like you have to be a crazy person. I got out of that business because it was good. We made some money. We had some fun, but we also, it was too stressful to deal with. And I don't know why I got that in my head at that time, but there was a point in my time I wanted to be super entrepreneur. And I'm like, all right, man, I built one successful business and,
Yeah.
what
That's
if
what I
something were
was
to
thinking.
happen to it? I need another one.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
let's
Exactly.
go. So then I built another one and I'm just like, you know what? This is just too much chaos to handle.
Yep.
It's just not healthy. And I feel like I'm an insane person, but I'm not that insane.
Uh-huh.
I'm based enough to know that there's a point where enough is enough and too much is much, and money is not everything. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Money helps, and when you have kids, it's important to be able to make some money. But at the same time, it's just like every day you want to wake up and be excited about what you're doing. You don't
Exactly.
want to be stressed out because you have to deal with something you hate. So I mean, and business is always a war, but
Mhm.
it's just like at some point you wake up and you're like, man, I'm getting old. I'm just tired. I don't want to deal with this crap. I just I'll take way less money and just do something I really, really, really deeply care about.
Yeah, and talking about the emotion aspect of artists, right? When it comes to these music producers, you know, I mean, we have these sort of creative vision when somebody gives us a project, right? We have our own vision, and we think that this sound should sound like this and that. But we should also kind of understand the demands of a client or the market demand, right? So how do you teach your folks, or how do you teach your team, or how do you approach yourself finding that balance? Because you got to stay true to your kind of artistic integrity that you have, but you also got to make sure that it also appeals to the wider, bigger audience, because not every time rock and metal would be appreciated by all the sectors of your life, I mean the life.
Well, I hate to say this, but I think that not everybody is meant to be successful, and I wish it was the opposite
Mm, mm,
in terms of like my intentions. But
mm,
I know the reality,
mm,
and especially as somebody who owns a company and has hired a lot of people,
mm.
some people are just not. You know, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves.
Exactly.
And as much as like you want to try to come at it from an angle of compassion and
Mhm,
try to help somebody who's struggling,
mhm.
some people literally don't want to be helped. They just want a handout. And every time I've run into that situation in my life where I've let the softer side of me like try to help somebody, it's always blown up in my face. So I've learned that unfortunately, you have to be able to call a pig and a cow at some point and be realistic. And you can't run a successful business with a bunch of people that don't want to help build a successful business. So in music, when I sit down, I screen the people that I work with, or at least
Okay.
when I used to produce. I would sit down with the bands because I know that most of them probably don't have what it takes, but I'm still going to give them my full energy. But they would come in and I'd be like, look, do you want to be successful at this? And they would say yes. And I'd be like, do you really want to be successful at this? Because we're going to have a serious talk about this. And if they
Mhm.
would say yes, I would give them a spiel while I'm editing drums for like 3 hours and tell them what it actually takes to make it. And then I would tell them exactly what to do. And if in 4 months they haven't come back and done every single thing on that checklist and then some, I knew they were not cut out for it. I had two bands that did this. Both of them got signed to major labels when I was, like I said, a basement producer. And
Mhm.
what I did is I tried to find diamonds in the rough, like people that really got it and had the work ethic. One band was called Vinyl Theater. Like those guys, this story is amazing. Listen to this.
Okay.
So these guys show up at my studio, like most bands, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, we want to blow up. I'm like, you sure? I'm like, do you know what it takes? I'm like, why? If you don't have a good answer for why you want to do this, you might as well not even do it because you're not going to do it unless your why is very, very
Mhm.
powerful. That sounds like some self-help book,
Not
but it's
really.
very true.
It's true. It is
You
true.
really you have to know why you're doing something. I
Yeah.
actually, before I divert, this is also good. I met a billionaire once at a marketing conference, and he asked me a question like that, and it totally like destroyed me. Like it was like really eye opening. It took me a year to answer it, but when I answered it, it really led to a whole nother level of. I don't know if you want to come back to that, but just remind
Let's
me
do it.
if
Let's
that's
do it.
interesting. So, anyways, like you have to have a why. And I sat there and I told the band, I'm like, you guys sure? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, because I'm looking at you right now and I'm telling you you're not going to make it. And here's why. And I'm like, you guys ready for the truth? And they're like, I'm like, you really want to hear it? And I just destroyed them. And I'm like, your band name, garbage. Like
Starts with the
no
band
one
name.
wants to strap that across their t-shirt. Like, so I made them rethink everything. Singer gets in the booth. I'm like, your vibrato, dude, out of control. Like no rock and roll singer sings like that. Like, oh, this is my style. I'm like, it's not your fucking style anymore. You just told me you want to make it. So I mean, I whooped his ass, Gordon Ramsay style. Now
Yeah.
now people would be like, that's not appropriate. Nah, this is performance coaching. Again, I could psychometrically profile the people that I'm working with. And I know some people, like I'm the kind of guy you come in with a stick. You're like, this isn't fucking good enough. You're not going to blah, blah, blah. You won't this. This is shit. Fuck off. Come back when you're serious. Like when somebody tells that to me, that's what motivates me. Not, well, we did a pretty good job. So I saw that in these guys. They were like alpha competitors. And I'm like, you're not singing good enough. I don't care. Do it again. I mean, I was just brutal.
Yep.
And, I had that kid on like the edge of, we wanted to punch the wall. I could see he wanted to kill me. But at the same time, then I sat him down and I did the smart thing as a producer. And I said, listen, I know what you're capable of. And right now you're here. I can see you here.
Nice.
And the way for you to get to here, you need to listen to what I'm saying. I'm not doing this because I'm an asshole. Yep. I am here whooping your butt because I am the only freaking person you have ever met in your life that cares and actually wants you to succeed. And I'm not telling you any bullshit. I'm not your mom. I'm not going to self-congratulate you. You're not going to get a participation trophy with me. You're going to come in here and you're going to perform, and you're going to perform at a higher level than you've ever performed before in your life, or it's unacceptable to me. And he's like, whoa. And I'm like, you want to get famous? You want to be a rock star? Yes. Then shut up and get back in that booth and show me. All right. That band came back a month and a half later. And I swear to God, that guy must have practiced vocals 8 hours a day because he completely reinvented himself. That band changed their name, their image. They listened to every single thing I did. They came back with a bunch of bangers. They got in the studio. And I was like, he gets in the booth. I'm like, all right, here we go again. He didn't listen to me. Gets in the booth. And I was like, holy shit. I'm like, that was all right. Do it again. He said another line. And I was like, yeah, I'm not completely disappointed. And then he said the third take. I got up. I opened the door. I'm like, you fucking asshole. I give him the biggest hug. I'm like, I am so proud of you right now. Like, I'm like, don't let it go to your head. You're terrible. I'll go back in there.
That's so amazing. That's so amazing.
Dude, I was so proud because, again, for every one time that happens in my life, I can think of 200 times that it hasn't happened. So when you find people like that, man, we really got like intimately involved in terms of like working with the band, getting them a management, working with it, finding the right songs. And dude, that band exploded. They got signed to Fueled by Ramen in like a year and a half. I mean, their first show was probably for like 400 people. Like they just came out and killed it because they did exactly what I told them to do. Because I knew the formula to do this stuff. And again, there's a bit of a luck factor. Like you can't say that the music that you're putting out is going to react with people, but they had the sound that was reacting, and once we put them with the right name, the right imaging, the right songs, the right production, the right singing, like everything came together. The band did great. So, it takes a lot to be able to achieve something like that. And, you just got to look for, I tell this to producers all the time. In any market, there is some star, some diamond, some person who's gifted, and they are waiting for somebody because they don't know any better. Well, information wasn't available like it is now, but again, there's so much bull crap out there. It's hard to know what's good, but they're waiting for somebody to come and say, here's what you need to do. And they will do it. And if you can find that person and turn them into something, that's your ticket, because no one else is going to do that. When somebody, think about it like this, like in my life, no one ever reached out and gave me their hand and said, look, I've already made it. You've got some talent, some drive. And, I know you're going to be successful. Come with me. Let me make your life a little bit easier and let's take that energy and focus it somewhere where it can shine. No one ever gave me that. You know what I mean? I had to do everything the freaking hard way. And it's always pissed me off. So for me, being able to sit down and find those people and to be able to reach out my hand and saying, look, I've done this. I know. Let me help you. I don't want anything in return. I just want to help you. So like let's do this. Sometimes that karma comes
Yep.
back to you.
Yep.
And I had one particular kid I did that with, and he actually ended up getting me my first number one song that I mixed. And like 10 years later, but I helped take a 16-year-old kid from a basement who hated choruses and pop and got him signed to a major. And then he ended up writing with Howard Benson's team. And then, suddenly now I'm mixing for some of the Howard's guys. And like, we did all this stuff and it got me a number one out of it in Japan. And I was like, dude, this is amazing. Like, had I not reached out to that kid when he was 16 years old, 10 years later, it was him helping me.
And
So
speaking,
sometimes it
yeah,
comes back.
yeah, speaking of that, right? When you work, when you put in your hard work, um, it is not that always that the amount of hard work gets appreciated, and it may not turn out to be a great project for them. For you, you think that's one of your best work, but for them, it may not be the best work that they expected from you, right? So, how do you handle those kind of criticism moments, or kind of setback where you have given your 100% but has not satisfied the other one?
I mean, you got to look at it like this. No one project is going to sink your battleship. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like they might put a torpedo in the battleship and like it might take on some water, but
Mhm.
as long as the ship keeps sailing, eventually you're going to get to your port destination. So I don't look at any particular project. I'll give you an example. I just lost Jelly Roll.
Mhm.
And that one really sucked, but I got Bigger Name Mixered off it, which was crazy because I had everything was approved and I had no notes for them other than in caps. This is freaking awesome. I love this, whatever from the artist. But they wanted somebody else's name for radio, and great, I could be mad about it. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's cool. I at least got to mix a Jelly Roll song, even though it didn't come out and it's not the one on the radio. And even though they've got the biggest album out right now, dude, so what? There'll be another opportunity, So sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. What's more important than any particular battle is the entire war going on, meaning you got to play the long game. The problem I see all the time, especially with these students at URM, is they come in and they're like, I've been doing audio production for a year and a half. And by the time I'm 5 years in, I'm going to be a major producer. I'm like, no, you're not. And they're like, well, this person blew up. And I'm like, you didn't see the other 10 years they put him. It's not accurate. People don't understand. Like, it's like saying, I'm going to start playing basketball today and I'm going to beat Michael Jordan I don't sports. So, I'm going to go beat, golf. I'm going to go beat
Yeah.
Tiger Woods
Tiger
at
Woods,
golf in
yeah.
like 5 years. Tiger Woods could beat me like left-handed behind his back with a blindfold. You know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
unrealistic to make that claim and that assumption. Like people don't understand that most people that are mixers professionally working on big records are like in their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Yeah.
Like you look at a guy like Andy Wallace,
Yeah.
arguably the greatest rock mixer of all time. And like if you look at when Andy actually peaked, if you look up his age, dude was like in his 50s when he was doing his, I mean, he did some banger records in the 90s, but
Mhm.
like 2000s really was like when he peaked and just absolutely destroyed everyone. Dude was like in his mid 50s. And I was just like, wow, that's really eye opening to think about. Like, if you think you haven't made it yet and you're getting old, just realize that, like, here's somebody in there now, they're killing it. So the point is to be like great at something on that level. You might need to put 30, 40 years into your craft before you really start hitting the stuff you want to hit. Yeah, some people get lucky, but everybody wants to take shortcuts and they think, I don't know why, it's like an epidemic now with all this instant gratification, but there are no shortcuts. If you go in with a mentality of like, I'm going to play the long game. All right. I don't care about one project. If I lose Jelly Roll, so what, man? Like it sucks, but I'm going to keep working even harder now. You know what I mean? And next time I'll be better. Right. If I lose this or that project I just lost one to TLA last week and I thought I had a better mix and so did the producer. It didn't matter.
Wow.
That's what the client wanted. Am I mad about it? Hell no. I lost the TLA. That's badass. Like I'm proud of myself. I got to mix something that Tom did. I love Tom's work and I respect him, So like you can't get mad about that shit. You just show up, dude, and you just do it, Like you just go to war every day and it's about the average of
Yeah.
everything that you're doing. It's about the portfolio, it's like that slow, silent hand that just pushes everything up with it. So
Like you mentioned, right, Joel, that somebody who is like aspiring and thinks that in a couple of years they could be the Michael Jordan of the producing world. But they won't be, right? It will take years and years and years of practice, right? Like you stated,
They can
as
be if they want to be, there's some people that are just so talented and
yeah.
gifted that it's
Mm.
disgusting. But at the same time, I've seen people that aren't that talented just outwork everybody and become equally as successful. So either way, there's a door.
So
And if you choose to walk through it, you can do it. So you just
what?
got people just got to be realistic. You got to put the time in.
Yeah, sorry. So what do you think? There are certain common, mistakes or pitfalls that you see in these students, apart from thinking that in a couple of years they can, do big, and how can they avoid them as well?
Yeah, I mean, first off is patience. I
Mm,
think that's, like we just kind of talked about, that is really the main number one thing is no one's playing the long game because we go on Instagram, we get instant gratification. It's like
yeah.
instead of going to the bar now and meeting the girl, you got porn. It's like all these things are fake dopamine spikes that ruin our brains. And
Mm,
it's just kind of like
truly.
we're used to instant mashed potatoes. You go to the grocery store, you add hot water and it's done. Not You don't have to skin the damn thing, you don't have to grow it, you don't have to pull it out of the thing. You just walk down the store, you buy it, it's in a bag. It's like, you know what I mean? Everybody wants their instant potatoes. So learning to have patience and just realize that you've got time, man. Like it doesn't matter if you're 40 years old, like your life is just getting started. You know what I mean? And as long as you keep your health up, like you have plenty of time and to go do all the things that you want to do if you really, really embrace it. So patience is important. I think another major flaw, and
Hmm.
this is a rabbit hole that I think it's dangerous, and I got to be careful what I say because the problem with my scenario is like mixing has different levels.
Yep.
And as you ascend the levels, it's like a video game. Like you
Hmm.
might think the game ends at 30
That's
and you get
true.
to level 30 and you think you're badass because you've beaten the game, but now the game unlocks and now you're playing against players on level 50 and you're like,
Mm,
oh, I suck. I'm a noob again. And then you get to 50 and you're like,
yeah.
yeah. And then you realize it goes to 80 and you get to 80 and you're like, remember how I thought when I was on level 30?
Good. So you
So
laugh at
that's how I
yourself.
feel now is like as I've gone through a lot of these levels, I realize the thought process you're going to have at certain levels and where some of these people are that I'm teaching. So if I drop them some like level 85 advice,
Yeah.
they will mistake that and they will use that incorrectly and they will make the wrong assumption off it.
Yeah.
And then it's going to have the opposite effect. And so I have to be very careful with what I say and the advice that I give. And it's very frustrating for me
Hmm.
because it's just like, I have this gold mine of things I could teach people, but most of them aren't ready for it.
Yeah.
And there's no vehicle or platform that I can share that kind of information. I'll give you an example. Like Mauro Applebaum, my good friend, who's very, very successful. I mean, this guy sold like 160 million records. I don't even know. He's a mastering engineer, one of the best.
Hmm.
Mauer will call me at like 9 o'clock at night and we'll talk about some crazy high level stuff for like 2 hours, and like we'll do this deep dive. And I'm like, I wish I could podcast this, but no one's ready for this level of information. They wouldn't understand it. It was like,
Cool.
I remember in
Mm.
2006, when I was younger and just getting started in my career, I remember reading this quote from like this very famous mixer. And he's like, oh, the secret to mixing is getting the mid-range right. Now, young me was like, oh, that's a dumb thing to say.
Yeah.
Dude, it took me like 15 years to understand what that actually means. Now I'm like, dude, that's brilliant advice. I wasn't ready for it, man. So the point is that when it comes to this type of information, I have to be careful because there's stages and you have to go through the stages. So what I would recommend to people,
Hmm.
and I say this carefully because there's a lot of biases in this industry, and I don't want to piss off any of my sponsors. There's a lot of people pushing the digital world, and we have a very strong incentive caused bias. So you have a lot of, and I want to be careful. I don't want to say anything negative. I'm not knocking anybody or attacking anybody.
Hmm.
I have respect for all of these people. But what I will say is those checks from those plugin companies are fucking awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like life-changing money for some people.
Yeah.
And when people are writing you checks like that, sometimes people will say whatever they want to say because the incentive bias,
Exactly.
and this is a well-documented thing, it's like the insurance salesman will send you a bad contract because they wanted to weighted more for commission,
Yeah.
even though, they will violate what they truly believe and say whatever they say
Yep.
and tell you the opposite of what they actually do because the incentive is there to change their human behavior. Like this is a very, very well-studied phenomenon. It's the same reason people will justify anything if the incentive is big enough. So there's a very strong incentive caused bias for mixers to want to mix in the box. I don't think people should be mixing in a computer because sonically,
Hmm.
mixing on a large format console
Mhm.
is so sonically superior. It's shocking. Now, the problem with me saying that advice is it's going to get
Counter.
misinterpreted.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yep.
get 1,000 people that are going to be like, well, that's bullshit. So and so mixes in the box. And I'm like, no, you don't understand yet.
Yep. Yep.
Your hearing hasn't leveled up. You don't understand. My point is this, because like I said, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but we have an incentive cause bias to use the cheapest, crappiest tools possible.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. And because we make the most money and spend the least amount of time. This stuff, which you can't see right now, but I have a huge SSL in front of me and all this stuff. This stuff is not fun. No one wants to go spend $100,000 and acquire it. It's a pain in the ass to deal with, but man, there is something sonically you can do on tools like this that you cannot do any other way. I don't care what any manufacturer says. I sell plugins. I've sold a lot of them.
Yep.
I know how these things are made, but AI is coming, this and this and that. Yeah. Fuck all that shit. I don't care. I'm telling you right now,
Yep.
if we get to the point where, we're able to replicate that stuff,
Mm.
it's going to be a while. That's kind of like saying, okay, again, maybe it's a bad analogy, but we can make a robot that looks like a woman, and now you don't need your wife anymore. You know what I mean? It talks like
Mm.
one. We can mimic it. We can change how you know what I mean. Like the day that happens, the world is probably so fucked that it doesn't matter if like So I don't know. I'm saying we
No, I
got a
get
long
it.
way to go.
I get it. I was
Yeah.
actually about to come to your SSL as well. Where you talked about there are levels, right? I think that is one of the reasons that you've got this new SSL console, that you want to like level up your game, because you know that the level you're at is something you deserve more, and that's why you got the one.
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain depth in like hardware effects. People are
Mm.
like, well, the hardware effects are digital processing. I'm like, yeah, but the difference is when you do the hardware effect into a console, there's a depth. And when you go back to the plugin, like if you listen to it in solo, you're like, sounds like a reverb, sounds like a delay. You listen to it, you go back to the plugin and you're like, man, dude,
Yeah.
what's lacking? Something's not there that was just there. And you go back and forth and you're like, you can hear it. It's hard to quantify what it is, but it's worth it for somebody like me.
Yeah.
So my point is, and like I said, I have to be careful with this because I don't want to just blanket statement that stuff, because a lot of people aren't ready for something like this. Like this is not a smart decision for
Yep.
somebody who's not a pro mixer.
Exactly.
I think that if you want to make music that's timeless,
Hmm.
if you want to make something that stands out, you need to go back in time. And this is the pitfall going back to the original question. You need to go back in time and look at some of the tools, because what's gotten lost now,
Hmm.
mixing is at the highest technical level it's ever been, but
Yes.
things don't sound as good as they used to do at an emotional level. And there are people that are doing good, even university research and documenting this. Like when you go back and listen to old records,
Yep.
they feel different.
They
Man.
feel different.
Like I can hear bass coming through my SSL and they'll be like, well, digital technically has more headroom than analog. No, it doesn't. I don't care about the specs. I am telling you, I can throw more low end in this SSL than you can count. And if we did it in the computer, it would crumble like this in seconds. So there's stuff going on in the electrical world we don't understand from a mathematic. We just can't. We're not there yet, and it's happening. And you can hear it. More importantly, you can feel it, and it's obvious. And if you
Mm.
know what you're listening for, it'll change your life. And if you do, but not everybody needs that kind of tool. Again, some people think they want to be a professional mixer in their 4 or 5 years in their career. They don't understand they're going to be a top liner. They don't
Yep.
understand that they're going to be an editor. So
Yep.
why would they go waste their money on tools? So I have to be careful when I say something, because when I say, Joel said this, we have to go buy an SSL, but I can't afford an SSL. It's like, well, hold on. You buy a tool like this when you've been doing this for a long time, you have the clientele to support it and you can afford it. Because for me, I need to mix one song and then I've paid for all my gear in the studio for the month.
Yep.
So it's like, there's a point in time that this makes sense and it doesn't. So the point is that I think we've gotten caught up in the marketing hype of always like the new game changing this and that. And I love plugins. I'm not saying anything about negative plugins. What you get for what you get for the value proposition is amazing. It's better than ever. But if you want that 10% that matters in the big leagues,
Mm-hmm.
oh, but what about this guy? He mixes in the box. Like, yeah, but are you really, that guy is, I mean, technically he's an amazing mixer. Are you really feeling the depth off those mixes? Me, it sounds flat as a board. Like I'm not inspired when I listen to it. I mean, obviously I listen to it and I respect the mixing and I admire the brilliance and the talent of the person doing it,
Yep.
but I'm not feeling it.
Yep.
But when I go back and I listen to this stuff done on a board, man, like it shakes my body in a physical way. I get a physical goosebumps. I can't get that with anything that's mixed in a computer. I have done so many tests and shootouts, and like I have listened to so many people's mixes before they went digital and after they went digital. And I'm just like, man, we are going the wrong direction. And
Yep.
it upsets a lot of people when I say that. So my thing is, if you want to get better sonic results,
Uh-huh.
I think one of the biggest pitfalls we're falling is don't buy into the hype.
Yep.
Start investing intelligently in some tools that make a little bit more sense on the hardware side, because something is getting lost.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, while music technically is more, it's being mixed at a higher technical level than ever. But like when you go down the charts, so many things are just lacking
Yeah.
this feeling. You're not connecting with it anymore. And it's not just me. Like, this stuck with me. My friend that works at a car dealership, and he's
Yep.
a bass player. So he likes music and sonics, and he's an older guy. And he's just like, how come new metal sounds like shit now? I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm
Exactly.
like, these mixes are sick. They're great.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but dude, they just don't hit like they used to. And I'm like, this guy sells cars. He doesn't know what an EQ is or compressor. But he's like, yeah, me and the mechanic the other day, we're talking about like all these new bands on the radio. It just sounds so flat and sterile. Is it the editing? I'm like, no, we've been editing like that since the 80s.
Yep.
He's like, is it? I'm like, I honestly think, and I know this is controversial, and I'm probably going to get destroyed for saying this, but I don't give a fuck. This is what I believe, and I've done the tests, and fuck you for like. I think the production matters and the way that we feel the emotion of music. And there's a guy who's actually done some really cool like things on this. There's a guy, he did Children of Bodom, Ansi Kipo,
Uh-huh.
and he's a Finnish producer, man. And he went full analog and like tape, and he has like some stuff on his YouTube. And even on YouTube, you can take like a digital master versus a vinyl, and you can play the two back to back, and you can feel the movement of the energy different on the analog one. And I do this all the time with people. I bring them in my studio, like, look at this. I mix this on my SSL, I mix this on my API, and then here's the box. Same thing. And it's so crazy to watch people's expressions and how they're like, because when they hear it, I had a guy come in who's a very well-known YouTuber,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a friend of mine, and he was in town, and he's like, dude, analog summing is bullshit, man. I saw this Dan Worrell video and this and this and this. And I'm like, really? I'm like, let me show you. I'm like, for all that shit that you've heard and listened to nerds talk about on the internet, I want you to listen to these two things. And I played it for him. And he was like, dude, what the fuck? I gotta stop cursing. But he was like blown away. I'm like, so listen to these. I'm like, maybe analog something doesn't matter for somebody who can't mix. But if you're an actual mixer and you're a badass, like listen to the difference, And he's like, that's not even close. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, look, I'm opening the session and we're A-Bing. And he's like, that's so obvious. He's like, how can people not hear that? I'm like, well, like I said, if you've been working for 5 years professionally, obviously your skill level is not to the point where that's going to matter. But if you're mixing real stuff at a high level, a 1% difference, 1% can be 20%. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
In the Army, they call it a force multiplier.
Mm.
It's like somebody who's great. It's like you and I could get a new golf club with the most titanium engineered. I don't know what I'm talking about, but in our hands, we might be able to hit the ball another 10 feet and we're like badass. Mm-hmm. You give that shit to Tiger Woods, he'll be like, dude, I just set some world record with this thing. This technology is awesome. You see the difference? We get a 1% gain. He gets a 20% gain because of the skill.
Exactly. I think that brings to me the next point, because one of my friend who's also a famous YouTuber, he wanted to ask this question to you because he's got a show today. So basically, he's got some Avalon stuff, SSL Fusion stuff and Neve 8801. These are stuff that he has, but he's on this edge where he is about to sell them off because he feels that, he can do much more with, the in the box, right? The VACs, the computer thing that he has. It's a little unfortunate to be in that situation, but he just wanted to, get a suggestion whether should he keep them or should he start exploring? Because as you mentioned, right now he can hit about 10 feet or 10 yards from now. With more practice, he can probably have a 400-yard shot, right? Slowly.
Well, there's a couple of things I would say to that. I've never heard his work, so I don't know how good or not good he is. Like I don't know what level he's on. Sometimes I feel like people have a hard time hearing things because they're not ready. They're not on the level. And because at a lower level, you can feel them more, you can hear them. Like my mom, I could play 2 songs and she won't understand any, but she feels the music. So 10 years ago when I started going analog, or a little bit longer than that. And I started kind of getting gear like a summing mixer and stuff. Like I didn't really know what I was listening for.
Mhm.
And then I ended up going back in the box. See, I've done 10 years on each format where I've
Yep.
exclusively mixed. I went back in the box because I'm like, dude, I own a plugin company. I know technology is going to catch up. I was like where all the hype is right now, but
Yeah.
5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, like 2000, I don't know, too much math, 16. So, I went 100% in the box. I'm like, none of my clients care. They all, I can do everything I can do in the computer and it's badass. And I'm telling this to this world famous mastering engineer. He's just shaking his head. He's like, dude, you're going to understand some days. Like you're going through a stage right now. You
Uh,
watch. And I'm like, shut up, dude, whatever. So, um, when I was sitting there in my car and
mhm.
I come back from CBD company land. And, obviously we've been doing URM and stuff the whole time, but, I was doing more of like a corporate role.
Mhm.
Like I was doing just meetings and spreadsheets and,
Mm.
planning and deals. Like it was very all behind the scenes. So, and then I kind of got back from that. I'm like, I want to get more involved back on the front side because I have all this energy for this. And I just love reaching directly out to the
Yep.
person that I want to be involved more in that side. And I started a band again because I miss playing music. And I'm like, so basically, I did this really my best in the box mix, and I was so happy. And I got in my car and I'm comparing it against all the new metal that came out. I'm like, dude, this is sick. And then I was like, all right, let's see how this stacks up. And then I started throwing on the analog guys like Colin Richardson, Andy Sneap, like the dudes from back in the day who like did the shit. And then I was like, man, something's missing. I can't quantify it. It's like, I'm like, what? Something's missing on my mix. And like, I started thinking about gear because I tried everything for like 4 months. I had every plugin test. I bought every plugin ever. I tested so many things. Oh, I heard if I put 8 NLS instances, it'll make the non-linearity. All right, let's
Mm.
try this non-linearity. Let's try this. Let's try using Saturn to I tried everything, man. And like we shot it out all clinical over here. Like Joe and I did some deep dive nerd study stuff that I feel like had I done them in high school, I would have never met a girl in my life and I would be single. I would have died a virgin. Like it was some nerdy shit. It was like really bad. We
Okay.
sat here for weeks and just did the dumbest, like nerdiest stuff. And like, um, I couldn't crack it. I was like, something's missing. Something
Okay.
is freaking missing. And I don't know what it is.
All right.
And then I was like, well, I used to have a summing mixer and I liked it. I'm like, let me just get one in here, just try it. I buy it and return it. I can do this all on the computer.
Okay.
Dude, I hit play in my car. I
Uh-huh.
immediately heard it. I'm like, that's it. Something I can immediately hear it on
Wow.
the first train. There's a certain impact that suddenly my mix had that it didn't have before. I'm like, where did that come from? And then I bought a bus compressor and I'm like, oh my God, that's it. Well, this led to this cascading thing of tests. So then I ended up buying a console like 7 months later, an API. And when I got that thing in here, I was like, I'm an idiot. I just spent 20 years of my life doing something professionally,
Uh-huh.
and I've been doing it wrong and doing it the hard way. And I've been like literally tying my hands behind my back. I can't believe how stupid I feel right now.
Wow.
And it just made mixing that much easier. It was like, how do I explain it? Like you raise the fader digitally in a
Uh-huh.
mix, like any session I know the mix, like in the DAW, I raise the fader and I'm like, I immediately grab the EQ. Like I have to EQ it because it sounds hazy.
Correct.
It's clouded. There's no clarity. It doesn't do this.
Yep.
I get on the console and I raise the fader. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I
Wow.
raise the next fader. I'm like, things just
Still
naturally
sound great, huh?
do
Wow.
that.
Blend.
It's not like this jumbled
Wow.
ball of shit
They don't
like it is in
clash.
the box.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I got the SSL, that was even more to an extreme. Now I'm like, okay, I get the whole record on an API and an E mix on an SSL. There's something an SSL does that nothing else can do, especially in the bottom end. My God. And it's like, I just I've gone through this journey. I've tried and tested everything. And man, I remember calling the mastering engineer when I went analog. He's like, and again, I was talking to him, Maor. I was talking to him last night, and
Okay.
he was just like, we were kind of joking about it. He's like, dude, your work in the last 2 years is just quantum leaped. He's like,
Okay.
5 years ago, if you would have asked me, could this guy have mixed a hit record? I would have said he's not ready yet. And he's like,
Mm.
it wasn't an issue of your skills. It was
Mm.
just you know, you're using the wrong format. Like your stuff isn't, there's a higher level to this stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just about how good is your snare drum. Again, this is the problem. Like this advice is like somebody who's 2 years into mixing is sitting there thinking about their snare drum. I'm like, it doesn't fucking matter. Your snare
Yeah.
is not important.
Yes.
And they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. What about this parallel trick? I'm like, it's not important. It doesn't matter. Like you're thinking low level. You need to think high level if you want to do big stuff. Like they're not ready for it. They have to go through the whole stages.
Yeah.
So when I give that advice, like this is the problem I have. It's like no one's gonna fucking understand it. It's gonna get misquoted. People are gonna use it against me, and it's gonna piss me
But I
off.
can ask you a question on this. A pretty
Yeah.
similar comparison, I would say. Let's say that you're talking about an analog console will sound much better than in the box. Right? Let's shift into the world of guitar, okay, guitar music,
Yes.
especially when we think of those huge stacks of amplifiers back in the days versus then those things are getting into small boxes that are multi processor, but then it kind of changed, and these Kempers and the neural DSP thing then
Uh-huh.
with the quad-coders came into the market, right? So they are trying to bridge that gap between the real analog by these quad codec stuff. Can we also anticipate similar approach in the mixing world as well, where we are talking about these huge SSL console versus in the box, but somewhere in
It's the exact
between?
same thing. Yes. And I have an opinion on amps.
Please go ahead.
So I've been playing guitar for 25 years,
Yeah.
something like that. Who's counting anymore? I'm old and gray. But I'll tell you this. I get pissed off when I see people who are like badass producers and they'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh man, I can't hear the difference." And I'm like, "Shut the fuck up." Like I can hear the difference through my iPhone listening to this and I'm not even in front of my speakers and you're telling me you can't? Like, come on, man. They're trying to be and no disrespect.
Yeah.
I understand the game. Go feed your family, right?
Correct.
Go feed your
Go
family.
feed the
But
family.
what I want to say is I love amp sims. I
Mm-hmm.
really do. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're amazing. The technology, just like plugins, like all this stuff I'm saying about analog. I want people to be very clear. I love plugins. I use them every day.
Yes.
Dude, plugins are great. I love them.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that let's not forget the old tools because in some ways they're superior. And to think
Mm.
that they're not is you're lying to yourself. So, same thing about amps. As a guitar player, when I plug into any sim, it doesn't feel the same as plugging into a tube amp. And a good guitar player knows this. Now, the problem is a lot of people aren't good guitar players, but a good guitar player who is really nuanced in their playing immediately can
Mm.
feel the difference
Mm.
in the way the pick cuts the string.
Yeah.
I can do it because I've been playing a long time and I shred. I put my time in, my 10,000 hours plus. So like I've also recorded guitar players for 2 decades. So I know every little nuance about guitar playing. Like it's different. There is a difference. Now, guys that are badass will come out and say because they're getting endorsement contracts. And like I said, go feed your family. And these tools are great. Like a Kemper is a great tool. A Quad Cortex sounds great. Dude, I'm a huge fan of Amplitude. We use it all the fucking time. I love that amp sim. That being said, notwithstanding the foregoing, as the lawyers would say.
Okay.
That being said, primarily we use load boxes and
Uh-huh.
real guitar. I would use cabs if I could get something, but there's to me a 20 to 30% difference. Now, I have ripped some pretty badass. Again, you got to understand my 20. When I say this, people get pissed on the internet because they don't understand. Like I said, this goes back to the analogy. They think a 20 to 30% difference is like 0 to 100. I'm not playing in the 0 to 100 game. I'm playing in like that top,
Yep.
we're talking top tier stuff here. Like, I work on big artists. So
Yep.
like I'm talking about in that 1%. So even if you get to like the top 5%, there's a 100% range. If you get to the
Mm.
top 1%, there's a 100% range in that. If you get to the top 0.1%, there's a 100% range in that. You have to think like that, you see? So when I say 20 to 30%, there is your context. So to me, there's a 20 to 30% difference in terms of how it sits in like my mixes versus the Sims. And I have ripped some badass. I use Sims in actually almost every one of my mixes
Mm-hmm.
and I layer them in. But the main thing for me, if I can, is always a real amp because of the non-linearities or whatever of the distortion. Dude, it has a way it sits in the space. It's wider. It's got the bottom end chugs, like the way it's got more depth. It comes to life. You listen to it, it creates an emotional reaction. The Sim doesn't do that. The Sim always has a softness to the top end. Like I said, I love amp Sims. They sound awesome and you can rip great tones out of them. But when I listen to active rock and I listen to people's mixes, and a lot of these guys are my friends, and I'm like, guys, man, those guitars, like, why are we putting up B tones? What happened to the good
Mm.
days where like you would listen to the guitar tone, that song come on the radio, you'd be like, shit,
Yeah.
we're not getting that anymore. We're just punting. Again, incentive
Yeah.
cause bias. This is the problem. It's no knock against those guys. Their mixes are amazing. But like I said, they're flat as a door.
So
I'm
can
trying to go the opposite way.
can I
So
ask
to your
something?
friend,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I
Go
would
ahead.
say to your friend, the YouTuber, like, dude, listen, if you're not hearing it yet, don't give up on it because you're going to kick yourself in the ass at some point because one day it's going to click for you and you're going to be like, holy shit, you can't replace those tools with a computer. Now, I will say this, there is good analog and there is bad analog. And bad analog is not much better than digital, even if at all. I mean, usually digital is much better than bad analog. But when I say analog, I am talking about like top tier shit. Because
Mm,
again, I'm a mixer, is what I do for a living. I don't want something that's a C plus in my
mm,
studio. I don't want to put out a mix that's only okay. I want to put out the best damn thing I can. So for me, every 1% matters. Every little detail matters. I am trying to put the most emotional impact in my stuff because I want it. Here's the thing. I want my work to sound good 10, 20 years from now and not sound fucking dated. Like some stuff that I've done digitally, at the time people thought it was badass. And then I'm like, oh my God, that didn't age well. It sounds like this with this, with this, with this sample library. That's embarrassing, but at the time it was sick. I don't want to be that guy anymore. I want to
yeah,
be the guy who puts something out. Like you go back and listen to an Andy Wallace mix from 1999.
yeah.
Dude, it still sounds sick. The Black Album, Metallica, it still sounds
Oh,
incredible.
oh yes, oh yes,
You know what I mean?
yes,
Like, we're
yes.
not going to say that about the latest round of mixes in active rock right now because
Nothing.
everybody's mixing in a computer.
Can
And
I
it's no
can I
knock
ask
on them.
something? Can I ask something
Yeah,
on
go ahead.
this
Go ahead.
before I lose kind of that thought? You talk about real sound, right? You talk about using analog. You talk about going old school. What's your thought on using of samples, especially
I love samples.
in the drums, where using samples to kind of enhance the sound experience of a listener, but in real terms, it may not be sounding as the drummer would be playing. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a good question. Now I do own a sample company, so here's my
S-
incentive cause bias, but my actual mixing reflects my opinion on this and is
mm,
congruent. So,
mm,
those of you trying to call me out as a hypocrite, you're wrong. So, you can tell I get beat up all day, every day on the internet. I'm just like,
yeah,
I'm
yes,
I'm very opinionated and passionate, and
yeah,
I people like to get into it because especially younger and experienced people because they read something like you don't know what you're talking about and like bro shut up and just post me something you mix like you're not even allowed to shut up go put something on a fucking chart and then
yeah.
come back and start slogging me because
Mm,
like I may not like a mix that somebody does who's
mm-hmm,
really successful, but I
mm-hmm,
respect the shit out of them because I know, like, I not like what, but because I know how talented they are. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, so that I fucking the internet is mind blowing. Okay, so sorry, I got off. What is the question was?
Samples,
Samples,
authenticity
yes.
of sound.
So the thing is with drum samples, it's like how I feel about bands. It's like you want to get all artsy and shit, but you want to make it. Go write a couple hit records first. And if you can
Uh,
do that, then you can go do whatever the hell you want. Go feed your family
mm,
first. I will always choose to feed my family first. So right now, samples are in. Everybody's using samples. Dude, I love how samples sound. I'm trying to create an emotional reaction. I don't care if I need to make my kick drum larger than life. If I could get a natural kick to sound like that, I would do it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not that much of a purist. I'm a purist in terms of technology because I think it adds something that enhances the art. And this is what this is all about. This is why I'm so passionate about that. Like when you hit play, you feel the music more and you get part of it and you want to listen to it and it inspires you as a listener. This is what this is about. You connect with the song more on an emotional level. So if I need a drum sampler to do that, I don't give a shit. If it's amp sims, if it's real amps, whatever. All I care about is getting the best representation. So if the goal of the mix is to have power, because we're doing a heavy genre, and we want that kick to just destroy, dude, sample it up, baby. Let's go.
sample it
I just
up.
don't, yeah, I don't care if I got to edit. You know, I'm trying to be more organic in my mixing, but
Uh-huh.
at the same time, I'm also trying to mix larger than life and completely over the top because I mix a lot of active rock. So
Yeah.
there's the things is this is not a zero sum game. The things there is a marriage and a unison of things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody likes their fucking polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying is that there is always a marriage or a balance that can be achieved where you can have something that's hyper realistic but still organic.
Yeah.
You can have something that's unnatural but totally natural sounding and feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people got to understand and recognize that these dichotomies can exist and there can be a marriage and a union of things. It's not one or the other, but on the internet, it's always black or white. It's like politics, Democrats, Republicans, this, that, the West, the East, it's like, It's not that fucking simple. It's always there's a blurred gray zone.
All right. So Joe, when you mix something and when you have to like really test the sound and you want to like understand how they sound at different devices, what are the approach that you have? Do you do the same thing like you get in the car, play on your phone, play on your mixer, play on your earphones? How do you do that?
Well, the first thing is you got to have a set of speakers that you know and a room that you know. And I've been struggling with all of the room correction software recently because it's like I'll be like, I don't use room corrective software. I've never professionally like treated or measured my room, dude. And people will be like, "What the fuck are you giving that advice out to thousands of people? Like, what is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Dude, I got shit on the charts. I'm not having any problem fucking mixing. Like, what have you done? You know, if you're gonna come and call me out and say I don't know, I'm not professionally fucking competent. Like, you know, show me a number one song that you've mixed. All right.
Exactly.
Like, so, that being said, my anger reaction towards getting called out by people that shouldn't be, talking shit. First and foremost, it comes down to you have to have a set of speakers that you know. Because at the
Okay.
end of the day, I got a pair of Amphions in here. I know them intimately. I know
Mhm.
how it translates. I know how this room translates. I can't get the corrective software. It like hypes my stuff in a way I maybe I've mismeasured or something. I'm struggling with the corrective software. So my speakers are wrong. I've got all these nulls and all these peaks, and my graph looks crazy. I don't care about any of that shit. I know when I hit play what it sounds like and what I got to put where. And when I get out and I go into my car, which I also listen to tons of music on and I study mixers and whatever, I know in those two environments that when I come in both and I'm like, this sounds amazing. I know that's going to translate on the radio. I know that's going to translate on Spotify. I just know from experience. So some point you have to learn the space that you're in. So once you know the space that you're in, you can empirically judge if something is good or not because you know that yeah, my room is a little bit sub heavy at this or that. So you can tune your room a little bit with your tools. So for me, like I said, it starts with knowing your speaker systems and how it translates. And then once you have that, you have confidence because you know how it's going to come out of your room. And then you can trust your ears. Again, the other thing is also competence. Like your ears go through different stages of hearing. And like the way I hear now is so much at a higher level than what I used to, and the nuance that I can hear. Um, like I said, it's difficult, like explaining to somebody who's been mixing for 2 years, the nuance, and they're like, I can't hear it. And you're like, it's obvious as the sky is blue. But if the person is colorblind, they don't know what blue looks like because but if
Exactly.
we could get a surgery or something where we could fix their color blindness, they'll see blue for the first time some part later in their career and they'll be like, wow, that's a beautiful color. So
Nicely put. Nicely put.
yeah, it's this is the hard part of this stuff.
And you wanted talking about the difference in percentages, right? We're almost towards the end of our podcast, but I have a few more questions for
Yeah,
you.
as long as you need, I'm here.
Yeah, yeah. So Joel, people may not have the acoustic treatment at their house, like some upcoming music producers, right? And they may not know their speakers that well. They're more used to mixing in the headphones, right? How much of difference would it make for someone who's mixing on headphones versus mixing in a properly treated studio? Is that going to be
Well,
huge difference?
well, you can't properly EQ on headphones. Now, some people will take quarrel with that. I mean, look, obviously a good mixer is a good mixer. I have mixed and mastered on earbuds in an apartment on Moscow during busy traffic, and I've turned out stuff where the artist has been happy because my experience guides me. I
Mm-hmm.
know guys who have mixed records on headphones and they've turned out good. They're not their best work by far, but
Uh-huh.
they've mixed stuff on headrooms and it doesn't suck. Now, I struggle with this. I haven't heard them yet. So I'm going to put this with an asterisk, but I feel like I'm the biggest skeptic. And if Slate wants to send me his new VSX, he can send me a pair and I'll judge it for myself. But man, when I see these posts where people are like, oh my God, the new VSX, this is the most game changing thing. And I'm like, it's a $300 pair of fucking cardboard headphones, with the new upgraded software. And again, I'm thinking like when people were marketing console plugins telling us how it sounds just like a console. We modeled everything accurately. And then you get on the board and you're like, it doesn't sound fucking even close to my SSL. Like none of these sound close. It's like a joke to even say that they sound the same. It sounds different. One, they're both a useful tool, but we
Yeah.
can't say that they sound the same. It's not honest. So for me, that's kind of how I feel about mixing in headphones. And I could be wrong. Let me preface this. I have never in my entire life heard a pair of headphones where I'm like, these compete with my monitors. Like I've sat in the showroom floor. I just heard the Amphion 125s. And man, when I listen to those stuff, and I love Amphion, I just love the guys over there. They're the best. When you listen to those speakers, I mean, dude, the problem now is everybody's listening to their music like in their earbuds or on MP3 format. We don't just sit in our living room on a good pair of speakers and just listen to music. I did
Yeah.
that the other night for the first night in 20 years, and it was an amazing experience for
Yeah.
me. Like my system sucks at home. It's a shitty Sharp boombox, but man, like man, I connected with music that night and just like a spiritual level. Like it felt so good, and I encourage people to do that. The problem is like no one's listening anymore, and I get it. Like if you got to use the tools that you have, I'm not diminishing that, and I think you should use what you have. But when you listen to a pair of Amphion 125s and you sit and listen to like a great analog mix on them, dude, it's like it'll leave you fucking your jaw on the floor, like you speechless. Like you don't even know what to say. You're just like, you don't listen to music, you experience it. You know,
Wow.
it's like going to a movie theater versus sitting down and watching it on your laptop with headphones, and you get the full surround sound, and it's just like every wave of bass just destroys you, and it's like you're just immersed in the experience. So, man, like when I hear speakers like that and know what good, and go to like NAM and just listen to some of like the really expensive hi-fi stuff and just experience that. And then I go listen to any pair of headphones I've ever heard. I'm just like, man, I'm still waiting for a pair of headphones to blow me away. And I'll be the first to say when that day happens, you're going to hear about it. And I will put my foot in my mouth and I will be like, I was wrong. Just like I was wrong about digital mixing versus analog, like, look, it takes a lot of, most people will never admit they're wrong. I full heartedly admit that I'm wrong. And I think that takes balls to say because, so when that happens for me with headphones, I'll be the first to let everybody know. So, when I see people go on about VSX, like I'm sure it's a step up, but man, go sit in front of a pair of like 125s or like, I've been in some of the best studios in the world and I've listened to music and it's just like, dude, you can hear, like when I'm on Amphions, I can hear compression in a way you just can't on headphones. I can EQ and get in between the sounds in a way that you just cannot on a pair of headphones. Maybe I don't know. Every NAM, everybody's like, dude, you got to hear these headphones. This is going to change everything for you. Come sit down and listen to these. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, they sound all right. Like I still can't hear the mid-range properly. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, because I was also about to kind of bring this VSX topic, but you kind of touched upon it. So I think I'm good with
I
that.
want to hear them, but I'm pretty skeptical. I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure, look, I don't want to diminish them as a tool. I'm sure it's a great tool. And for somebody fitting that, again, there's different levels to this. Somebody in that situation, they're at home, they don't have a lot of clientele, so they can't afford speakers in a room and stuff like that. Dude, knock yourself out. Just understand that the limit goes up and the rabbit hole goes deeper. But that's the problem I have. I guess this is my overarching theme. People like take their context now and they just apply it as if it fits everything, and it doesn't. It's not black and white. It's like, it's just like, oh, well, this is the best thing I've ever heard, so it's got to be the best thing ever. And it's just like, no. It's kind of like saying, I went to the local bar and I saw 5 pretty girls I wanted to ask out on a date, but then you get in a plane and you go travel to some other country and you've never seen these people before, and now you've seen 5 more that you think are people, and they never even knew that existed. But once you see that, you're like, wow, that's a totally different, ethnicity, and like, wow, there's some beauty here to be found. It exists everywhere because our worlds are this small. We don't see it. We got to open our minds. That's my overarching theme.
I also read about your rant about reading audiobooks. I was kind of looking at the story the other day, and you were kind of specifying the fact that how important it is to read the audiobooks before getting into the details, right? But I also feel that there is certain decline in this book reading culture, like back in the days versus the
Yep.
Gen Z's and whatever gens, whatever. What's your thought on that? I mean, yes, you would want people to read the books, but is there any alternative, or is that the only way that you think?
I mean, yeah, ebooks and audiobooks and podcasts are good. The point is when you see it, I mean, well, there's also different styles of learning. And I've studied psychology and human learning and development and behavior enough. Certain people learn differently. Some people are oral, some people are visual. I think that reading hits a different side of the brain and should be part of it. Again, it's not either or. It's like a pizza. You know what I mean? It's like there's 10 slices to the pizza. And if you take any slice out, you still don't have a complete pizza. So, by pulling reading out of your learning, you're missing a huge slice of something that's going to hit your brain in a different way than you're just listening or doing is going to. You need to do all of them. It's a holistic system. It's not either or. So I'll give you, here's the reason I say this. And I'm noticing this, and this is something that struggles me because my mission is to help people get better at making records, right? And making better sounding records. This is what I'm doing. It's what I care about. And the problem I see is I run into people that might be a couple of years of experience into the business, right?
Okay.
And they know like this advanced parallel compression trick stuff that like isn't really even that necessary. But they don't know the difference between a figure eight and a cardioid on a mic, or where they would want to use super cardioid, or they don't understand proper gain staging in analog versus digital, or why it matters. They're missing like massive fundamental holes in their knowledge. Like I can't, I know a guy, I'm gonna throw him under the bus here, but the dude upstairs, Ryan, is a perfect example of this. I love you, Ryan, but I'm trying to make him better. So I hope he watches this. Ryan has a very successful business. He's the biggest hip hop guy in the city. He makes a lot of money. He used to be an intern for the guy across the hall. And the problem is like Ryan has no fundamental understanding of audio. He didn't go to school for it. He didn't read. He doesn't know signal flow. So, it's like he comes down. He's like, hey, I can't get this plugged into this. I don't understand how clocking works. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm like, you don't know how to hook up this to that? You don't know how a patch bay works? Like, I'm like, dude, this is fundamental shit. Like, you need to know this stuff. And he can't figure it out by himself. So I have to go upstairs with my assistant, two guys who did do the work, and go hook it up for him. And then if something goes wrong in a session, hey guys, can you come fix this for me? I don't know how to fix it. Like he's helpless. And it's like, we're trying to push into his brain that he needs to study this stuff and he doesn't see the value in it. It's like, everybody just wants the fucking handout. No one wants to do the work anymore. And it pisses me off. Like I'm on a crusade against it. So my point is this: back in the day when I decided in like 2003 or whatever to like get serious about production, like not just I'm doing it, I'm interested in it, but I'm going to actually learn how to do this. I went out to the library and I went to the bookstore and I got every book on audio production that had ever been written at the time. And I read them all, starting with the most basic, boring ass one from cover to cover, right? 5 times. I went and read like 127 page white paper on digital signal processing, which is the boringest. I mean, I would put that thing up there with toilet paper about how much I care about it. You know what I mean? Like right down the toilet, by Nika Aldrich. And I read about, all digital signal processing in like bit depth. And I'm like, I don't give a shit about any of this, but I read it multiple times because I needed to understand it, because without those fundamentals, I wouldn't know how to hook up a console or wire up a patch bay or understand basic signal flow or understand the gain structuring necessary. I see this all the time. People ask me questions where it's like they're pretty decent at what they do and they're missing the most fundamental thing. Like they don't know how to fucking crossfade in Pro Tools and make an edit that doesn't make a pop and click. And I'm getting this to mix and I'm calling the producer and I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, yeah, sorry, I was just in a hurry. I'm like, bro, you're in a fucking hurry. Fix it. So that's the kind of shit that if people would read more, that those fundamental gaps, because again, there's no like, I feel like we've done a much better job of this at URM recently, because again, the problem is no one wants to pay for that kind of content. No one's interested in, dude. They just want stupid, like, oh, the one trick I put on my guitars that upped my guitar game. And it's like, I used saturation, you know what I mean? And they're like, oh my God, dude. It's like, if I sit here and I drop some deep philosophical shit, man, like 5 people will be like, dude, that really hit me. If I'm like 1176 on bass is awesome, man, like 500 people will be like, fuck yeah, dude, this is so awesome. Like, hell yeah, man. Exactly. And I'm like, I'm, you know what I mean? Like maybe I'm just getting old, but it drives me nuts. So when we make content at URM, that's like really beginner based, and we have a lot of beginners, like a couple people watch it, but no one like watches it. They just want to jump to like some really advanced thing. And I'm just like, and you guys wonder why you're struggling, because you're trying to basically ignore the fact that the house needs a foundation and a basement. And you're like, dude, let's just throw some shit up. And then all of a sudden it rains and then it sweeps the whole house out with a flood. Like it's not built in anything solid. You need the foundation. And this is why books are great, because people have taken the time to write really boring books on microphone placement and impedance matching
Mhm.
and, stuff that's like, I don't care about as a mixer, but like it matters.
Yeah.
Got to know it.
So talking about URM, when we talk about students coming in, I'm sure there's a huge portion of the population is probably the beginners who have joined this URM, right? So when it comes to these interaction that you see on web, obviously on Facebook and stuff like that, right? There are times you can also go into a rant and talk about certain topics, but I'm sure you kind of hold yourself sometimes, right? Because not every time you'll just get into and start smashing people with certain topics. But in terms of the learning that people are getting like all across the world, right? How do you envision this URM in, let's say, 10 years later? Will people have same sort of enthusiasm and energy to get into music production, or things gonna change as we move forward? What do you think of that?
Right. Well, one important thing I think that I should mention is URM has a I mean, there are people in there that are like working pros and very famous mixers, just trying to keep fresh. There are people in there that are, aspiring pros. There's people that are like pros, but they're not necessarily working in the music industry. Like they work on smaller stuff, local, regional stuff. There are there are people from all levels.
Yeah.
So for me, I want to be because I'm looking at the market. I think the market, and again, I'm not trying to like, I don't want to say anything bad, but there's a lot of like cheap content on the market. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
low quality, just
Yep.
like,
Yep.
because the people doing it, they don't really, they haven't been doing this professionally. And there's some good stuff out there, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of the market is just flooded with like shit chat GPT level content. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's no knock. Like I said, go make your money,
Yeah.
respect to you. But
Yeah.
I want to be the person that teaches real mixing because I feel like it's becoming a dialing breed because we're so oversaturated with bullshit
Mm.
and people teaching things that people shouldn't be focusing on at certain levels and people then hold up as gospel because they don't understand it. Um, I'm trying to be the voice of real mixing and real
Mm.
art and
Mm.
like in our community, but we need balance because I understand that not everybody that we're teaching is ready for that. And um my goal, like I said, is to improve the average bar of audio production because,
Mm.
like I said, technology has increased, but music is getting worse and worse and worse
Yes.
sounding.
Yes.
And like that's not a trend personally I care for. I want it to go the opposite. I think it should be progressing and improving and people should be doing better work than ever. And like I'll give you an example like I think the Origin is the best sounding SSL console they've ever made.
Mm.
It's basically a modern 4000. They redesigned the circuit. It's the same circuit, but with like new. I don't know. I'm not an electrical engineer, but
Okay.
like I love the old 4000s.
Mm-hmm.
I love the 9000 architecture. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like the super analog stuff,
Mm-hmm.
dude. I
Mm-hmm.
think the Origin is the best sounding console. It sounds insane. I was so wrong about this thing. And so there's an example of technology moving things forward in a positive way where it's just like, man, there's some hardware people are making that is just stunning. Like the Unfairchild compressor that Eric Valentine has, like that thing, I don't have one, but every time I've ever heard anybody run anything through it, I'm like, damn, like that's something that it's just like people are making some incredible stuff. Now, the problem is, like I said, the biases and the incentives are leading us to make
Yep.
certain decisions that are so I want to my goal is to return the tide on. This is something that I've seen happen. It's been like the last 2 years. I'm like, I want people to get back into analog and I want us to be honest about the conversation we're having about it because we're not, because of the overwhelming marketing push. And then the YouTubers don't help, like I said, because they're just like, they get something for free. I mean, everybody
Mm-hmm.
sends me shit for free. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
They send you something for free. And then you're like, I have to say something nice about it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Okay.
it doesn't invalidate any of these tools, but
Correct.
to make comments like, "Oh, I can't hear the difference." And it's like, "Bro, you can't hear the difference? You should never mix a record again." Because like I said earlier, I
Yeah.
can hear it on my iPhone and speaker mode watching your YouTube video and you're telling me that this sounds like it doesn't sound the same. Let's be we're not being honest in audio. No one's being honest. I
Mm.
want to be fucking honest
Mm.
as I can. You know what I mean? That's what I care
Mm.
about. And sometimes that gets me in a lot of trouble. But I just like so in terms of going forward, I want people to understand that digital tools are amazing and technology is great and to embrace it.
Yep.
But I want people to understand that there's something on the old side to not forget old tools,
Mhm.
because old tools still have a value and there's something there that's important. And if we don't acknowledge it, it will get lost and it'll be very detrimental to music going forward forever. So that is the hill I'm dying on right now. And it's met with a lot of resistance. What I will say is I have watched a massive influx of people starting to get into hardware at URM.
Mhm.
And I understand this shit isn't cheap, but if you're like a working pro, you should invest. It's like, to think that we can come in and compete professionally, right?
Mhm.
Um, with like a laptop and nothing
Mhm.
else in a pair
Mhm.
of headphones is like ludicrous to me, because it's
Mhm.
like, if I open a McDonald's franchise, I have to
Mhm.
go spend $500,000 in fryers and hardware and
Correct.
like fucking lights and cash registers and
Correct.
counters and tile flooring and playland
Correct.
before I can sell my first burger.
Yeah.
If I were to just like, okay, I have a McDonald's, if I'm just standing there with
Yep.
like a couple of frozen burgers in my hand out on the street,
Yeah.
that's not McDonald's.
Yep.
So for us to think that professionally we don't need to invest in ourselves, that mentality is just cancerous. And I am on a crusade against it.
And I'll tell you what, my own personal experience about that, how I enrolled into Nail the Mix. Okay. So I started getting this Nail the Mix, ad everywhere I went. Okay. Whether in Facebook, I
I'm
started
glad
the
our marketing team is doing their job.
Nail the Mix, Nail the Mix. Okay. And at that time, I think there was Decapitated band mix was there. And I like that band, right? But I
Dude,
just
they're
go,
amazing.
yeah, I just got like sick of the ads. Okay. I was like, say, what the heck? This Nail the Mix is coming everywhere. And one day on a weekend, I was just like, it again came on my screen. Then I said, no, let me watch what is there, because I never paid attention to it. Then I realized that about $100 odd, you get access to the best. I mean, my favorite bands, that I've heard in last 15, 20 years, come there, break down their mixes, and tell them how they were able to achieve it, whether it's in the box or hardware, whatever. But the amount of knowledge that I could see and the amount of money that I'm here to invest, there's a daylight difference. The knowledge that I would get is worth, I don't know, it's even, I can't even like numerate them, but it's thousand and $1,000 of experience that I'm getting just by, subscribing annually. And that's what I felt, right? And that's where I'm also preaching it to my friends that, hey guys, you know what? If you guys have all got time, please invest at least $1, taste it, and I can tell you, you will not regret it. You will straight away go for the annual subscription, and definitely, enhanced version. And now you've got the James Bogren and you know this new thing, that 35 hours of video that has come up, right? I mean,
Yes.
you would not imagine these things happening 10 years back, or even 5, 7 years back. You would not imagine. You could only hear these bands and just imagine how they were able to achieve that kind of sound, those kind of sound. But with Nail the Mix, it is so easy for all of us to get access to the world of world class producers. And definitely, when I enrolled, and that time I think it was a bloodbath, right? And
Oh, great.
his session was a bloodbath to me, because he kept on layering the VSCs, and I was like, all right, I'll just probably start from the fundamentals. And I
Lawrence
start.
is such a great mixer, man.
Oh,
He is. He's a good buddy. I love Lawrence. He's such
yeah.
a great dude,
And you know
and
what?
he's a great mixer.
Yeah, and what I did, I definitely recommend how he has done his kick sound and the guitar sound on that record. Especially kick, I have saved it as a template. Whenever time will come, I'm definitely gonna use that approach on how Lawrence has done it. And yes, talking about some of the experience that I have in the Nail the Mix, and I probably take this opportunity to kind of promote as well, to all my fellow musicians, that of all the things that we do on our daily basis, like watching Netflix, right, and subscribing to so many OTT content here and there. We buy phones for about $1,000, and change it every 2 years, right? If you are an aspiring music producer, I think you could probably get rid of those expenses and spend some time, at least an hour or so a week, if you're having fun. Yeah, that's what I mean.
He's cute.
Yeah, yeah. So, and just to speaking personally, I enrolled in the month of March for Nail the Mix. but a very unfortunate incident at my home, and I just could not get time for the nail the mix. I actually lost my son last month, you know,
Oh my
and
God.
yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that. It's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah, and then some of the amazing content were coming up in nail the mix, but mentally I was not ready, but still I wanted to but still if there was a friend that could probably derail my negative thoughts and get back into the world of music, it was nail the mix. So that credit goes to them as well. Credit goes to you as well. One final question before you kind of talk about the billionaire incident.
Ah,
uh
yes.
yeah, you want to go with that billionaire incident?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whatever you want.
yeah, let's go with the billionaire one. You met a billionaire and you had some experience.
Is that a Packers jersey, by the way?
Yes sir, yes
Oh
sir.
my God. Are you a Packers fan?
um so I knew that you're from Wisconsin, right? And just a tactic, you may say, like an icebreaker, make you feel easy.
That's so funny that I just totally didn't even realize that. I mean, I love football and I
Yeah.
have watch it, but I married a Russian. So um my wife doesn't understand American football. She likes
Uh-huh.
soccer. So for
Ah.
me, I remember sitting there like watching the game, and then she knew my sore spot. It'd be like the playoffs. So I'm like sitting there drinking a beer, watching the typical American, and she'd walk in and she'd be like, "Why are you sitting on the couch? Why don't you go build your business?" And I'm like, "Damn, okay, fine." And I get up, start going to work. She'd be like, "Why are you leaving? Spend time with me." And I'm like, don't use those tactics on me.
Anyways, what about the billionaire incident that you had? You
Sure.
learned something.
I was at a marketing conference and I was kind of going, I was at a weird existential crisis period of my life because I had built several successful businesses and I was kind of like, what's next?
Hmm.
I've conquered everything I've ever wanted to conquer. And now it's just like, what do I want to do with my life? You know what I mean? It's like I feel like I've peaked and it was really stressful for me. Again, I hate this is a hard thing for me to talk about because
Hmm.
anybody watching this who's not at that point is gonna be like, "Oh, it must be nice, jerk." Like, "Oh, like I can see how that immediately makes me sound like a terrible person or something like that. Like it could be framed very negatively, and I'm
Yeah.
cognizant of that. So this is where my hesitation comes in on
Yeah.
this. It's like I was in a it's not the worst problem to have, but
Uh-huh.
it's a real problem. And when you meet CEOs and you meet people that run companies and you know, as you become more successful, like your world gets smaller
Hmm.
and it gets harder for people to understand the stuff that you have to deal with and go through in your life.
Hmm.
And it's really, really overwhelming, emotional because you feel like you're kind of like on an island by yourself. The only people that you can talk to are your business partners or other people that own businesses because they don't understand. No one else understands your problems. Like if I go to the bar and somebody asks me what I do, I hate that question. I always divert it. I'm just like, oh, I work with bands, I
Yeah.
produce or whatever.
Yeah.
Because if I'm like, oh, I own some companies, oh, it must be nice, jerk. Like, it's like, no, hold on, must be nice. Where is the 90-hour weeks that
Yeah.
you've worked in your life? Don't tell
Exactly.
me it must be nice. I sacrificed while you went out and
Mm.
had fun and came home at 5 o'clock and took your weekends off and had time to go to the game and hung out with your friends.
Mm.
I gave all that stuff up
Hmm.
and I just worked
Exactly.
and I fed my kids.
Yes.
That's what I did. So don't tell me it must be nice. So for me, I kind of I have a chip on my shoulder about it because I there's a lot of negative societal typecasts about people that own businesses and it's like we became successful by hurting or stealing people. It's so the opposite. You get successful by helping a lot of people
Hmm.
achieve something in the marketplace and improving lives. And yeah, of course, there are people that are terrible people that run businesses, and there are people that are good-hearted people that run businesses that have great intentions that do awesome things. It's just like, again, the world likes black and white and narratives and good and bad, but it's not. So, anyways, so yeah, so this is my hesitation with answering this question because, like, it's personal to me, and
Yep.
like, I don't want people to misinterpret it, and it will because it will be used against me by the wrong person at the wrong time, and then I'll have to
Mm.
like go defend it on public record or something. So, anyways, so I was in an existential crisis at my life because I had achieved everything I could imagine, every goal that I have set for myself, and I'm like, damn it, what next? I
Right.
don't know what else. I
Mm.
mean, I was trying to find a real goal that I cared about that really like um really was like because that personality type like I couldn't think of something. I couldn't find it and I was like lost.
Okay.
Cause then I'm just working, just making up money, saving up money. Like I don't, I've got a ways to go before I can retire or anything like that. I have to sell some businesses or whatever. But like, and I'm at this marketing conference and I'm talking to this billionaire and like, he likes my energy and stuff. And,
Hmm.
we're talking about business and stuff. And I'm talking to this other CEO who's, she's very successful. She's done a lot of, he was like with her team, he was like investing them or something. And, and I'm hanging out with this French guy, right? This other guy who owns this other badass company. And like, we're just having this little CEO nerd out,
Hmm.
like business owner chat topic, like
Yep.
it's just like being in a room with a closed room with a bunch of people that can actually relate to the problems and the challenges you have in your life and
Hmm.
understand it. So the billionaire guy, he asked me a question and it's a stupid question. Again, like I said, there's levels to the game.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And this wouldn't mean something to me at a lower level, but at the
Exactly.
level that I was achieved at that time, it was everything.
Hmm.
And it was the right question at the right time. And that's what made it so devastating. And he's like, well, what's your biggest problem or hold up in your business? Or, like what's your biggest problem? And I spouted some crap off about whatever. And I knew because like you don't want to come up with a bull crap answer because that guy, you can't cut any bullshit. Like I got a friend he's sold a bunch of companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. And like I always feel a little on guard when I'm around him because like when I come in and I ask him a question, he'll like I'll walk in his house and he'll be like, not hi, how are you? How are your kids? He'll be like, what are you doing? How are you gonna scale it? He'll start hitting you with like real questions. You're like, dude, it's
Mm.
nice to see you. How about a hug or something? Like
Exactly.
it's just like you have to you have to be
Yep.
sharp and on it because
Yeah.
you just feel like you're like under this lens. So I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I answered the question and I was like, I want to rain check you on that. I said, because I need more time to really digest that. And he's like, yeah, you better do that because that answer was bullshit. And I was like, oh man, I'm like, he just destroyed me. And I'm just like, oh my God. So, I go over and I'm hanging out at the Airbnb. We CEO to like 6:30 in the morning. Finally get out, go home, sleep, wake up. I'm at the conference the next day. I'm hanging out with these other CEOs and like, we're just talking business. And I see the guy and I'm like, I want to pull you aside and I want to tell you something. I want to thank you for that question that you asked me last night
Yep.
because while the question was, what is your biggest holdup or whatever, I really dug into that because obviously talking to somebody like you, I want to have the best answer. And so his eyes lit up because he knew that he knew that I got it. You know what I mean? He understood it.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, you have my attention. And I'm like, and I just want to honestly thank you. And you probably get this all the time, but I'm a person who, I'm self-taught, self-made, and I believe in giving gratitude to somebody that's helped you in some way.
Hmm.
And it kind of just changed. It helped me realize the real problem and the crisis I'm going through right now. And I don't have the answer. And I have to answer that for myself. And it may take some time to find it, but man, like really, like that hit me deep. And I want to thank you for that. And he was like, I appreciate that. I'm like, can I buy you a drink? And he's like, you can. So we went over to the bar and I sat down with them, and then he kind of gave me the next level.
Okay. Okay.
The next level of the game. And again, like I said, if I wasn't ready for that, and he's just like, the question was simple. It's like, what do you want? Money or power? And I was like, well, aren't they the same thing? And he's like, no. He's like, what do you want? He's like, you have to answer this question. He's like, you don't need to know it now, but he's like, what do you want? Like, what do you care about? And he's like, and I'm like, well, and I started arguing. I'm like, there's more to life than that. Like, there's a lot of ways somebody can hear somebody say a question like that and beat that up on like on a philosophical thing. Like that's a stupid question.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like, I don't know. I got to think about it. And it took me a year to answer that question. I had to get out of that business, but then I came back to it and it led me to where I am now. This whole path, everything we've been talking about today, analog mixing. Um, I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and my energy
Mm.
because I completed and checked all the goals. The only thing, it's like, I would need more money and I would need to retire, but then what? You know what I mean? Like, so that's a bullshit goal. So like, what do I really want to do in my life? What do I really care about? Because nothing really means anything. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like all the things that we build, and this is something I've learned traveling. It's like you could be somebody and have done something really cool and changed a lot of people's lives.
Mhm.
But when you're on that bus in the subway in Russia, you're just in that woman's way. She doesn't give a shit. So it doesn't fucking matter. Like You know what I mean? That
Exactly.
woman's never heard it. You know what I mean? Like there's some deep philosophies there and things like that we can go into,
Yeah.
but like he made me realize and analyze this existential crisis and identify it of what I wanted to actually do with my life and what do I really, really care about. And was it going to be about money? Meaning, was I going to chase more business success, or was it going to be about influence and legacy? Even though it doesn't fucking matter to anybody else but me. Meaning, all the work that I've done in my life, all the people that nail the mix and URM, and all the stuff that it's helped, all the people that we've inspired. It doesn't matter because we're all just a little fucking rock going through
Yes.
the thing, and none of it matters. None of these bands, none of this music, none of it will last. The sun
Yes.
will engulf this. We'll probably nuke ourselves in the next 6 months, the way the world is going, anyways, and we'll all
Yes.
die, which is a horrible thing to say. But sometimes I want, so part of my brain is like nothing matters, but the other part of my brain, well, but it does matter. It matters to me. It matters to that person. It matters to, the fans. It does matter, so I had to think about what I want to do with my life
Yeah.
because it's like I could just hire a bigger team and scale and sit back and sit in an office all day and get on the phone and just have meetings all day and just tell people what to do and have them execute it and focus my time on that. But I'm like, what do I want to do? So I came back and I started mixing again professionally because
Wow.
that's what I love.
Yes.
And I started front facing URM again in terms of content, um, because that's what I love and that's what I care about. And that's what I decided I wanted to do with my time. For me, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about, because there's a lot better ways to make money in the world than music. Music is just not, if you're a get rich quick scheme kind of person, get the fuck out of this business
Music
because
is not the
run as
right.
fast as you
Yeah.
can. It's a brutal grind, no
Yeah.
matter who you are, no matter
Yeah.
what you do. Yeah,
Yeah.
people have made some money, but um, it's not about money for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. I have to feed my kids and stuff like that. Like I said, I live pretty simply with my lifestyle, but I care more about, like, I would rather have a sick studio and amazing tools that inspire me to create awesome music that touches people than have like a nice car. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
I don't give a shit about the car. I
Exactly.
don't fucking care. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's not going to last. I would rather travel and see people and do stuff. And, so that guy really kind of helped me identify that. And he brought me back into music. And it's not like I reignited my passion, but there was a point I had grinded so hard and so long that I had gotten burned out on it. And I needed to step back.
Mm.
And because there's so much bullshit that happens around, especially when you're dealing with like sign bands, like you could beat someone's ass in a mix
Mhm.
off, like
Mhm.
absolutely throttle, like undeniably, you played for 10 people and they'll be like, this mix destroys, but you'll
Yep.
lose because the name, or you'll
Yeah.
like, there's so many things that can happen that are outside of your control
Mhm.
that I understand. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's frustrating. I mean, imagine having to get into mix offs like every other day against people that are more famous than you. And like, it's tough, man. Like, you're going up against somebody who's a legend, and it's
Yes.
like you know that you're probably not going to win, but you still have to go and you have to try to knock Mike Tyson out at his prime.
Yep.
And it's like you're going to get in that ring, you're going to fight as hard as you can, and sometimes you knock them out, and
Yes.
sometimes you get your ass kicked.
Yep.
And it's like that's an emotional roller coaster. And a lot of people don't understand that until they kind of get to that level. And it's really tough to like do a mix on something and you're sitting there for days waiting for feedback. Like, did I get this? I know I spent 3 days on this and I'm not going to get paid for. And
Yes.
then you find out you did, or then you find out you didn't.
Yep.
So I decided I want to get back into that grind and that I loved it and I missed it.
Mhm.
And it brought me back to URM in terms of like wanting to be more involved in like the daily stuff in the community and just more with the people. I care about the people. I care
Yeah.
about their success.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so opinionated and adamant about this, because I know what mistakes I've made and I want other people to not make them, or to at least open their minds so they know that maybe in 10 years I'll be ready for this. And maybe that crazy guy that was ranting about this bullshit, he might have had something that was worth saying. So yeah, I know that's a long.
No, no, no. I think I'm also kind of replaying, the question that he has, what's the problem in the
That's a
business?
serious question.
Yeah, I was
Because if
just,
somebody asks you that sorry, go ahead.
I was thinking that these are some very simple sounding, but the most uncomfortable questions that you may not have answer right away, and keep talking about it, and will not even hit the nail. But you're
Yeah,
actually,
I mean, your grandma will ask you that question and you'll be like, "Yeah, whatever." You know what I mean? Like, I just you give some bullshit answer, but when somebody like that asks you a question like that, you know deep down inside that you need to put some thought into that, because if you don't come up with the right answer, like they're not gonna lead you to the next level, that and that will help you make a quantum leap in your personal transformation.
How long did it take you
So
to kind of, nail down the answer that you were looking for?
a year.
A year.
Like I said, I had to exit that other business because it was, like I said, I had to get my brain out of that mode where I was chasing money because,
Yeah.
like I said, you want to make money, music is not the place to make it. I went into a business where you can make money, and I made money, and it was awesome, but I paid a price for it mentally and emotionally. And I realized that what's the fucking point of having a nicer car?
Yeah.
To impress people that I don't care about? You know what I mean?
Oh, nicely. Yep.
What's the point of having a nicer house?
Yeah.
There's a point where like you have a decent house that you live in and you have some comfort and it's clean. But if you get a bigger one, yeah, you got a nicer looking mini bar, but I don't drink.
Mm,
Maybe you can put a pool table downstairs or a gym. I don't, like maybe you can put a pool in their back, but I don't swim. You know
mm,
what I mean?
mm,
Like maybe you can put a nicer car in your driver so you can sit in a nicer seat when you drive to work 5 minutes.
mm,
But I don't care about any of that. So for me, it's like I realized that I had to get out of this I'm gonna go chase money like thing. And I'm like, I just want to chase the most positive net impact I can bring to this industry possible.
which which
That's what I want
which
to do.
which is probably, one of my final question that I had for you, that how would you like to be remembered when it's all done and dusted? You know, a 65, 70-year-old Joel,
You got to stop asking me those billionaire questions, man, because that's the kind of fuck. That's the kind of question that's hard to answer. you know, I mean, I don't know. Um, it's a hard question to answer because it comes from an egocentric place in terms of like, what do I want? What would be cool? What's going to make me feel good? But that's not what it's about. It's not about me.
Mm,
It's about, I think, the impact of other people. I really, if I can get people to, if we can somehow raise the bar higher in this game,
mhm,
if we can impact more people's lives with what we're doing in a positive way, because music is like the one thing, you know, um, there's a lot of conflicts in the world between politicians, even on a local level, like spouses, people, roommates, former friends. The world is just filled with conflicts and negative things. Go watch the news. I can't watch it. It makes me feel terrible. Um, Music is the one thing that I think is positive. At least it's always been for me. It's like if I'm depressed or something's not going right or a bunch of horrible things have happened in my life, like I can pick up my guitar and in seconds I have an endorphin rush and I feel awesome and I feel connected to something and it just inspires me. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So for me, here it is. When I was that kid when I was 16,
mhm.
sitting at that table and I got that jolt from listening to Randy Rhoads playing
Yes.
guitar.
Mhm,
I want to give that jolt to somebody else and hopefully a lot of people.
mm.
That's what it is.
Wow.
Give me a second. That makes me emotional. That's hard to do.
No, 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 no. That is the ultimate thing that you would want to, achieve at the end of, everything that you've put in. Because the amount of that work that you have put in your prime time and it's still now, right? Think back and see that what have you done, you know, that is something that you want to achieve, right? Not those materialistic thing, not the big bank cars or the houses, but how have you been able to make difference in somebody's life, making them impact.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that in audio. It can be from a mix, a song that blew up that you know saved somebody from suicide. It could be something that inspired somebody to transform a song somebody inspired to that needed to go to the gym and start working out and transform their physical health. It could be music has the power to touch people. That's one like like I said, there's so much conflict in the world. I've gone all over the world and met people from Japan to Russia to Europe to Australia, like people from all over the globe I've met. And what brings us together is music. It crosses cultures, it crosses conflicts. I've just met the most wonderful people
Yeah.
all over the world from what things that we've done. And you know I'm about the people. I love the people. I love meeting them, hearing their stories, hearing about their challenges, talking about that stuff. that stuff inspires me, man. Like the URM meetups we do, the summits, like anytime I travel anywhere, I try to go meet up with URM people and just sit down because I know, like I said, that person probably is sitting there in their hometown. They can't go to the bar on a Saturday and talk to anybody about anything that they care about either.
Yeah.
But when we get together, we got something to chat about. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? That's
Exactly.
important to me.
Exactly.
I care.
The way I mentioned that it was very hard for me to overcome that grief of losing a child. And
I can't even imagine,
yeah,
man. Like, how do you?
and there I was like, my resort was about spending hours and hours watching somebody like a nolly mixing and showing his stuff, and I'm trying to kind of divert my mind from that negative thoughts to something that I'm trying to learn, because coming, I mean, I cannot think about the past, but something that I can think maybe a couple of years later is probably able to mix a little better than what I do. So that was the thought process,
Yeah,
kind of.
music is it's gotten me through a lot of periods in my life that have been very, very difficult, and it will get me through many more, as
Exactly.
I think it will a lot of people. It's like our universal healing language, and not a lot of things get me emotional.
Mm.
Like I'm very non-emotional because I'm just calloused and hardened from tough life.
Exactly.
But music is one thing that
Yeah.
has always been there and will always be. So, I'm glad I get to do this every day. I appreciate all the people that support what we do. And, every day we sit down and try to find ways to make it better. And it's always a roller coaster. Business is tough, it's brutal. There's a lot of bullshit that happens and goes through that no one ever knows about, but we're still here, we're still doing it. That's what matters.
Yep. With that thought, music unites us. Joel, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Like I said, I love doing this stuff because for me, it's just another way to go out and connect with people that are in our sphere doing cool stuff. And thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for your time.